A quick like and subscribe really helps our channel grow and allows us to bring you even more amazing content. Thank you for your support.
You never really know how far someone can push you until you're standing on the edge, staring into the abyss with no intentions of turning back. I learned that lesson the hard way when I found myself not just wishing for revenge, but actively plotting it. But let me take you back to where it all started, an unremarkable Tuesday afternoon, the kind where the sun hangs lazily in the sky, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement of our suburb. I was sitting in my living room, surrounded by the familiar comforts of my home, faded throw pillows, the scent of lavender wafting from the candle flickering on the coffee table, and the gentle hum of the world outside filtering through the open window. But all I could feel was the tight knot of anger coiling in my stomach. I remember how that anger felt, like a storm brewing just on the horizon, ready to break. I had just walked out of my job at the local art gallery, my dreams trapped behind the glass walls that surrounded my desk. It was a dead-end position, to be honest, but I loved it. Every day, I immersed myself in the vibrant colors and textures of creativity, hoping one day to showcase my own work. And that's when Jake appeared, a slick, ambitious new director who swept in like a breath of fresh air. At first, I was captivated by his easy charm and infectious laughter, but soon it became clear that he was more interested in climbing the corporate ladder than nurturing the talent around him. He wasn't just an annoyance, he was a thief, an opportunist who took what wasn't his to take. I had poured my heart and soul into a project, a passion piece that had taken months of sleepless nights to create. I could still hear the echoes of my excitement as I unveiled it in the gallery that night, only to watch as he casually claimed it as his own in front of our colleagues, basking in the applause I'd worked so hard to earn. My heart sank as I realized that my dreams were nothing but stepping stones for his own ambitions. But the ultimate betrayal came when he decided to borrow my car for a quick errand, a beautiful, vintage Mini Cooper I had saved for years to restore. It was more than just a car, it was a symbol of independence, freedom, and all the hard work I had put into building my life. When he returned it, I was too naive to notice the slight change in his demeanor, the way he smirked when I took the keys from his hands. It wasn't until I caught a glimpse of it parked outside my building a few days later, with fresh scratches along the side and the unmistakable odor of smoke permeating the interior, that the gravity of what had unfolded hit me like a freight train. And that's when the storm inside me began to rage. The air turned electric, and I could feel the rage boiling over, a fire igniting my resolve. This wasn't just about the car anymore, it was about reclaiming what was mine, my pride, my creativity, my very sense of self. So, you want your car back? Fine. Go get it. Those words echoed in my mind like a mantra, a promise to myself. I didn't know how far I was willing to go, but I felt the thrill of chaos whispering sweetly at the back of my mind. The stage was set, and I was ready to unleash a storm that would leave nothing in its wake but the ash of betrayal and the sweet taste of revenge. The moment I stepped outside to confront the reality of my situation, I felt like I was moving in slow motion. My heart thundered in my chest as I approached my Mini Cooper, its once vibrant paint now marred by the ugly scratches that seemed to scream betrayal. I could feel the weight of disbelief pressing down on me, a dense fog that clouded my thoughts. How could Jake, a person I considered a friend, do something so cruel? A part of me wanted to rationalize it, to convince myself it was an accident, a silly mistake. But another part warned me, whispering truths I was too afraid to accept. This was intentional, a calculated move in his game. As I traced my fingers over the damaged paint, memories flooded back like an unwanted tide. I recalled the late nights spent hunched over the hood, restoring every detail of the car, infusing it with pieces of my soul. I had named her Luna, a beacon of my aspirations and hard work. To see her disrespected like this felt like an affront to my very identity. A surge of anger coursed through me, feeling like molten lava bubbling beneath the surface, ready to erupt. Where was the fairness in this? I had done nothing but support him, and in return, I was repaid with betrayal. It was as if someone had ripped away a layer of my skin, exposing a raw, painful vulnerability that I didn't know how to heal. I stood there, grappling with feelings of confusion, rage, and a heartache that felt too heavy to bear. In that moment, I heard laughter erupt from the other side of the street, and my eyes instinctively darted toward the sound. There was Jake, lounging against his shiny new sedan, surrounded by a group of colleagues who looked up to him with admiration. He was animated, gesturing wildly as he recounted some supposed adventure he had with my car. Those familiar faces looked at him with admiration, and my stomach twisted in knots. They had no idea what he was capable of. My blood boiled as I watched him play the role of the charming hero, a far cry from the opportunist I had come to know. Why do I even care? I thought bitterly. He's just another phony, making a fool out of everyone. But it wasn't just Jake's betrayal that cut deep, it was the betrayal of trust, of friendship, of every late-night conversation we had shared over takeout. I had opened my heart to him, and he had twisted it into a weapon to serve his own interests. I leaned against the car, my breath hitching as I fought against the swell of emotions. I wanted to scream. I wanted to lash out and shake him until the truth fell from his lips like broken glass. Instead, I felt a cold resolve settle within me. I would not be a victim in this twisted game. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting deep shadows across the pavement, I imagined the sweet revenge that lay ahead. The thought sent a thrill through me, igniting the fire I had buried beneath layers of confusion and hurt. I could almost hear the gears of my mind whirring as I strategized, envisioning how best to expose him for the fraud he truly was. "You want your car back? Fine. Go get it." The words became my battle cry, galvanizing my spirit. The more I thought about it, the more I could feel the pieces of my plan clicking into place. I couldn't just reclaim my car, I had to reclaim my narrative. He would regret that he ever crossed me. But the rush of determination I felt that day turned out to be a flickering candle in a raging storm. Little did I know, Jake was not just some petty thief, he was a cunning predator who thrived on chaos and manipulation. Each day that passed, my initial anger morphed into something darker, something that threatened to consume me whole. The storm I had felt brewing was now a tempest, and I was caught in the eye of it, spiraling into a whirlwind of despair. As I sought out allies, people I believed shared my disdain for Jake's antics, I found myself met with indifference or outright dismissal. My closest friend, Lisa, whom I'd shared countless confidences with, listened to my plight but responded with a patronizing tone that made my blood boil. "Maybe you're overreacting a bit. It's just a car, after all." The words pierced through me like a blade, a reminder that my world, my struggles were insignificant to those around me. The isolation crept in, slowly suffocating me, and I began to realize that the only person I could rely on was myself. The tension escalated further when I overheard a conversation in the break room between Jake and another colleague. They were discussing a new project he'd spearheaded, and as I listened, my heart plummeted. They were praising him for his vision, unaware it was built on the shattered remnants of my own creativity. My stomach twisted into knots, realization dawning that while I was stewing in my own anger, he was thriving, winning allies and accolades I yearned for. It felt as if the ground beneath me was slipping away, and with it, my sense of belonging. My mental state began to deteriorate. I found myself awake at night, pacing the floor, heart racing as I replayed my encounters with him in my mind. Each memory became a weight, dragging me deeper into despair. The more I plotted my revenge, the more isolated I felt. I stopped reaching out to friends, pushing them away so I wouldn't have to share the raw, furious thoughts swirling in my head. I felt like a ghost, haunting the edges of my own life, waiting for the moment my rage would erupt like a volcano. Then came the day when the humiliation hit its peak. I had decided to confront Jake directly. Fueled by a cocktail of anger and adrenaline, I found him in his office, the air thick with the smell of fresh coffee and self-importance. I demanded an explanation for what he had done to my car, my voice steady but my heart pounding like a war drum. But rather than the confrontation I anticipated, Jake's response was a condescending chuckle that echoed through the room. "Relax, it's just a car. Besides, you should be grateful I didn't write it off." The laughter that followed from his lackeys felt like knives piercing through my skin. It didn't stop there. He casually tossed a couple of crumpled bills onto my desk, compensation for the car that felt like a slap in the face. The moment felt suspended in time, and I could feel my cheeks burn as the laughter continued to ring in my ears, a chorus of mockery that only I could hear. In that moment, I wasn't just confronting Jake, I was facing the reality of my own impotence, and it left me raw and exposed. I stumbled out of the office, barely holding back tears, feeling like I had just been stripped of my dignity. The walls of the gallery felt like they were closing in on me as I navigated the halls, avoiding the concerned gazes of people. I stumbled into my studio, the small sanctuary I had carved out for myself amidst the chaos of emotions swirling in my heart. The door slammed behind me, a reflexive action fueled by anger and hurt, a barrier between me and the unforgiving world outside. The silence enveloped me like a thick fog, but it did little to soothe the tempest raging within. I collapsed onto the worn-out couch, feeling the tears I had been holding back finally spill over. That humiliating encounter with Jake replayed in my mind like a broken record, a haunting melody I couldn't escape. "It's just a car." Those words echoed in my skull, reverberating through every crevice of my shattered self-esteem. I felt small, insignificant, reduced to a character in someone else's story, a footnote in Jake's climb to success. I buried my face in my hands, but the tears only made the storm inside me worsen. Then, something snapped inside me, a realization so powerful and paralyzing, it consumed my thoughts entirely. I was tired of being the victim. Tired of feeling powerless while Jake reaped the rewards of my hard work, my dreams, and my creativity. The rage I had felt earlier began to morph, crystallizing into something sharper, darker, a resolve to take back what was rightfully mine. It was the final straw, and in that moment, I decided I wouldn't just reclaim my Mini Cooper, I would dismantle Jake's empire, brick by brick. As the reality of my decision sank in, I pushed myself off the couch and paced the studio, a renewed fire burning in my veins. I envisioned the meticulous plan forming in my mind, each thought fueling the other, like a wildfire devouring a dry forest. I would need to be clever, calculating, transforming my passion for art into a weapon of retribution. I grabbed my sketchpad, a tool I had used countless times for my art, but today it would serve a different purpose. I began to sketch my plan, scribbling down ideas that initially felt flimsy, but slowly took form. There was something liberating about shifting my focus from despair to action. The very act of planning felt like I was reclaiming my power, piece by piece. My thoughts drifted back to the way Jake had paraded my stolen creativity as his own. The confidence he exuded, the supply of sycophants hanging on to his every word, it all began to illuminate a new path. I would expose him, not just as a fraud but as a manipulator who took advantage of those around him. I would show everyone who he truly was. In that moment, a sense of purpose washed over me, eclipsing the shadow of despair. I would gather evidence of Jake's transgressions, the bits and pieces of my work he had so effortlessly claimed as his own. I knew it wouldn't be easy. Jake had friends in high places, and he was skilled at spinning narratives to his favor. But I had something he didn't: desperation and a fierce will to reclaim what was mine. The turning point came not just as a realization of my anger, but as a profound understanding of what was at stake: my identity, my artistry, and my very future. I was done running away, done hiding in the shadows of his success. I would become the architect of my own retaliation, and revenge would be my medium, my canvas. "You want your car back? Fine. Go get it." The words hung in the air, a promise I made to myself. I could picture the moment vividly, the look on Jake's face when he realized he had underestimated, with my mind racing and a fierce determination igniting my spirit. I sketched out my revenge plan in meticulous detail. Every moment I spent strategizing felt like taking back a piece of myself. This was no longer about just my car, it was about reclaiming my creativity, my dignity, and my narrative. I would turn the tables on Jake and make him pay for everything he had taken from me. Here's how I planned to execute my revenge, step by step. I knew I couldn't just accuse Jake of theft and manipulation without proof. I needed hard evidence that would expose his lies and deceit. Over the next few weeks, I made it a point to document everything I could about our project, the emails, drafts, and any correspondence we had shared. I had saved some of my original sketches and notes, so I started compiling them into a comprehensive timeline that illustrated every instance where Jake had taken credit for my work. I also reached out to other colleagues discreetly, engaging them in casual conversations about the projects Jake had championed. I wanted to see just how much they knew about the origin of those ideas, and whether his reputation was as untouchable as he believed. I even befriended the gallery intern, who often shadowed Jake. She was eager to share tidbits of gossip, and I subtly asked her about his methods. The more I gathered, the more confident I felt. I was building a case. Next, I needed to find a way to turn Jake's friends against him. This would require some clever maneuvering. I decided to approach a colleague named Sarah, who had been vocal about her frustrations with Jake's management style. Under the guise of casual conversation, I subtly expressed my concerns about his treatment of staff and his penchant for taking credit for others' ideas. Over lunch, I carefully planted seeds of doubt, nudging Sarah to consider how often Jake's success coincided with the misfortune of others. The idea was to build an alliance of discontent without revealing my true intentions. I knew that if I could rally a small group of colleagues to question his authority, it would destabilize his influence and give me the public support I needed when the time came to strike. As I crafted my plan, an unexpected opportunity arose. The gallery was hosting an annual art exhibition, and each of the staff was encouraged to showcase their work. This event would be the perfect backdrop for my revenge. I decided to create a series of pieces that depicted the journey of an artist overshadowed by a charismatic fraud, themes of theft, betrayal, and reclaiming one's voice. The pieces were not just canvases, they were bait. I poured all my energy into creating artwork that was raw and reflective of my experiences. I would not only showcase my talent but also create a narrative that alluded to Jake's deceit without naming him outright. The finale would include a piece that, when unveiled, would draw a direct connection to my journey. My Mini Cooper, a beautiful representation of my artistic spirit, would be featured in the center of the exhibit. On the night of the exhibition, I planned to unveil my art in a dramatic fashion. I would invite Jake personally, ensuring he was present to witness the transformation of my despair into something powerful. The invitation would be laced with sarcasm, hinting that this was a moment he would not want to miss. As the crowd gathered, I would narrate the story behind my artwork, subtly weaving in the parallels between the night of the exhibition arrived, electric with anticipation. The gallery buzzed with people, laughter, the clinking of glasses, and the soft strains of music. My heart raced, not just with anxiety but with an exhilarating rush of power. I was ready. As I stood next to my centerpiece, the painting of my beloved Mini Cooper, a stunning explosion of color and emotion, I took a moment to breathe it all in. The canvas pulsated with the raw energy of my journey, my anger, my heartbreak, and ultimately, my reclamation. I could feel the weight of the past slip from my shoulders as I transformed pain into beauty. The crowd moved in waves, gathering around each piece, admiring the stark contrasts, and the stories woven into the fabric of each work. I caught glimpses of familiar faces, colleagues I had once shared laughter with, now looking at my art with genuine admiration. And then, I spotted him. Jake, standing near the entrance, his polished demeanor radiating confidence, unaware of the tempest brewing behind my smile. "Can you believe this?" I murmured to Sarah, who stood beside me, her eyes wide with excitement. "This is it. This is the moment." With my pulse quickening, I stepped forward to the center of the gallery, the spotlight washing over me. I cleared my throat, and the murmurs faded into silence. I knew Jake was watching, and the thought sent a thrill down my spine. "Welcome, everyone," I began, my voice steady, though my insides churned. "Tonight, I want to share a story of betrayal and reclaiming one's voice." I gestured toward my painting, feeling the weight of the audience's gaze. "This is Luna, my Mini Cooper, a symbol of my passion, my independence, and the hard work that has been overshadowed by those who thrive on the efforts of others." I saw Jake's smirk falter, the confidence flickering in his eyes. "What is she doing?" He seemed to think, but I pressed on, the momentum propelling me forward. With every stroke of the brush, I captured not just the beauty of a car, but the spirit of an artist silenced by a fraud who masquerades as a friend while stealing dreams along the way. My words were sharp, each one cutting through the air like a knife. The murmurs began to rise once more, curiosity morphing into intrigue. I could feel my fire igniting theirs. "Jake," I said, letting his name hang in the air, "you took my work, you took my car, but most importantly, you stole my spirit. Everyone here applauded you for my efforts while I stood in the shadows, watching as you built your empire on my creativity." His face turned pale, the facade cracking, revealing a glimpse of the man beneath the charm. The audience shifted uneasily, eyes darting between us, the tension palpable. I could see disbelief etched across his features, and it fueled my resolve even further. But tonight, I take back my narrative. I take back my voice. I gestured towards a series of images projected on the gallery wall, photographs of my original sketches, studio notes, and snippets of emails. Each one a testament to my creativity that he had twisted into his own. Gasps echoed through the crowd, shock spreading like wildfire as the evidence unfolded before them. Jake's arrogance dissipated. I saw fury flash in his eyes, the realization that his carefully crafted world was crumbling around him. "You're making a mistake," he shouted, his bravado crumbling as the exhibition that night was both a triumph and a reckoning, igniting a spark in the gallery that would burn brightly for weeks, if not months, to come. Jake's face, once adorned with the confidence of a man who believed himself untouchable, had morphed into an image of disbelief and rage. As I unveiled his deceit to the world, I felt the weight of my past lifting, the chains of humiliation and sadness shattering like glass. I was no longer a victim, I was a force to be reckoned with. The aftermath, however, was not as clear-cut as I had hoped. The initial applause for my artwork soon turned into whispers, some of admiration, but many filled with uncertainty and gossip. Colleagues I had once considered friends now looked at me with a mix of awe and wariness. The divide was palpable. Those who stood firmly behind Jake seemed to vanish into the shadows, while others began to rally around my cause. But the fallout was swift. Jake, confronted with undeniable evidence of his deception, retaliated. In the weeks that followed, I watched him spiral into a defensive state fueled by desperation. He tried to sway the narrative, crafting a story of his own to undermine my claims, painting me as a bitter artist who couldn't handle rejection. His allies, once loyal, began to question their own judgments. The web of lies he had spun started to unravel, but not without collateral damage. I was called into meetings, scrutinized for my bold confrontation. Many viewed me as an instigator, someone who had disrupted the harmony of the gallery. I could feel the tension in the air, a thick miasma of uncertainty and fear. Some colleagues whispered in corners, unsure of where to align themselves, while others openly supported me, their encouragement fueling my resolve. I learned quickly that creating art was one thing, but navigating this new social landscape required a different kind of creativity, one that involved careful maneuvering through alliances and enmities that felt like a minefield. The gallery owner, bemused by the chaos unfolding, decided to issue a public statement in support of me, citing the importance of integrity in the art world. Undeniably, this was a win, but it left a bitter taste. My work, my passion, had become a battleground for a war that I never chose to fight. I felt a pang of guilt for the inevitable fallout that would come from my revenge. People who had nothing to do with Jake's betrayal were now caught in the crossfire of our conflict. Yet, the spotlight I had sought brought a newfound visibility, and with it, opportunities I never imagined. Offers for solo exhibitions flooded in, and a few patrons expressed interest in my work, eager to support the artist who had found her voice amidst the chaos. But every time I stood before a canvas, the memory of Jake's betrayal seeped into my brushstrokes. I could not escape the truth that my art was forever intertwined with my pain. As the months rolled on, I began to notice subtle changes in Jake's behavior. The once charismatic figure now walked through the gallery with his head down, the bravado stripped away like layers of paint. He was a ghost of the man he once was, his reputation marred by the exposed truths of his opportunism. The colleagues who once admired him looked at him with disdain, and the applause that used to follow his every word turned to silence. I felt a mix of satisfaction and guilt as I witnessed his downfall. While he had taken so much from me, I could not shake the creeping feeling that I had taken something from him, too. But it became clear.
Hey everyone, it's Kimberly. I've been holding onto this story for a while now, and I think it's finally time to share it. I never thought I would find myself in a situation like this, and I still can't believe how it all unfolded. Grab a snack, because this is going to get intense. I live in a small neighborhood on the outskirts of town, where everyone knows each other, at least, that's what I thought. Picture tree-lined streets, manicured lawns, and the kind of friendly wave you exchange with your neighbor as you bring in your groceries. My house is a cozy little two-story with a white picket fence that I had painted myself. It's just me and my rescue dog, Max, who is the most loyal companion I could ever ask for. When it comes to my world, there are a few key players. There's Sarah, my best friend since childhood. We've been through everything together, from awkward teenage crushes to the challenges of adulting. Then there's Mr. Thompson, the elderly gentleman who lives next door. He's like a grandfather to me. And of course, there's Jake, my charming but infuriating neighbor across the street, gorgeous in a boy-next-door way, but often too cocky for his own good. But the person who changed everything, that would be the package thief. I never got his name, but I will never forget the way he stole my trust and everything that came with it. It all started when I discovered that several of the neighbors were missing packages from their porches. We joked about it, thinking it was just a prank or a temporary nuisance. But when I found out that my precious delivery, a brand new camera I had saved for months to buy, had been taken, that's when everything shifted. I remember standing there, staring at the empty space where my package should have been, my heart pounding with disbelief. I felt violated. I felt angry. I felt a burning need for justice that bubbled up within me, and that's where my story truly begins. As I dug deeper into the mystery of the package thief, I soon found out that getting my stuff back wouldn't be enough. I wanted him to know how it felt to be on the receiving end of betrayal, to have something precious stripped away without warning. So, buckle in, because this is the tale of how I turned my heartbreak into it wasn't just the camera that was taken, it was a piece of me, a reflection of my hard work and the joy that came with finally owning something I truly wanted. I had spent countless hours researching, saving every penny from my grocery budget, cutting back on weekend outings with Sarah, and skipping out on the latest trendy coffee shop just to afford that camera. When I finally placed the order, I had imagined the photos I would take, capturing Max's goofy expressions, the flowering trees in spring, and all the moments that made this little neighborhood feel like home. The day it was scheduled to arrive was supposed to be a milestone. I had even set aside time to unbox it with a glass of wine, feeling like I was finally stepping into a world of my own. So when I checked the tracking app that morning, my excitement turned to dread as I realized it had been marked delivered. I hurried to the porch, my heart racing, only to find that empty space mocking me. I searched everywhere, convinced I had just overlooked it. I even asked Mr. Thompson if he had seen a package lying around. But no one had. After posting about the theft in our neighborhood group chat, it became painfully clear that I wasn't the only victim. Sarah had lost a beautiful sweater she was supposed to wear for an upcoming wedding. Another neighbor had his son's birthday gift stolen, a shiny new drone. The anger started brewing. It was like a poison spreading through our little community. But the worst part was discovering that the thief didn't just come and go under the cover of night. No, he was living among us. Just days after my package was stolen, I saw him casually strolling past my house, a smug look plastered on his face as he glanced at the empty porch. It was then that I recognized him, a friend of a friend, someone I had even exchanged pleasantries with at the last neighborhood barbecue. My stomach churned at the thought, this was someone who I had trusted, someone who had shared laughs and food with neighbors like me, and yet here he was, betraying that trust with every step he took. The more I thought about it, the more the betrayal twisted my insides. I felt like a fool for ever believing that we were all looking out for each other. It was as if the very foundation of my community, built on trust and familiarity, had crumbled beneath me. I began to obsess over what I would do, how I could make him feel the way I felt, exposed and vulnerable. It was more than just anger, it was a deep ache in my chest that refused to go away. I felt like I was spiraling down a rabbit hole, my thoughts consumed by visions of retribution. This guy had no idea what he had set in motion. I started gathering evidence, not in the legal sense but in a more personal and twisted way. I found myself lurking out on my porch at odd hours, hoping to spot him again. I took to social media, combing through his posts, trying to glean any information that would help me understand his life. It was like I was a detective in a movie, except the plot was getting darker by the day. I learned he had a history of petty crimes, little things that made his character more predictable, but also more infuriating. Then came the day I saw him again. This time, he was walking with a group of friends, laughing, as if the world was his playground. I watched him from my window, my heart racing with a mixture of fury and despair. He was wearing that ridiculous beanie he loved so much, and I remember thinking that it made him look even more insufferable. And that's when it hit me, the realization that he was living his life without a care while I was stuck in this whirlwind of resentment. But it didn't stop there. The sense of violation morphed into a paranoia that consumed every waking moment. I started asking myself if he would one day come back. What if he targeted my house again? Or worse, what if he decided to escalate his antics? I had always been a relatively private person, but now I was constantly peeking through the blinds, studying the street for any sign of him. Each shadow cast by the trees felt like a potential threat. Then one night it happened. I was up late, scrolling through social media, when I saw him post a photo of himself holding a brand new camera, the same kind I had lost. My heart dropped as I read the caption, "Just got this sweet rig. Can't wait to shoot some amazing pics." I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. My camera. My dream stolen and flaunted in front of my face like a trophy. That was the moment everything changed. I started plotting the ultimate plan. It was no longer just about getting my camera back, it was about delivering a message. I wanted him to feel the weight of his actions, to understand that what he had done wasn't a mere theft, it was a betrayal of the community he pretended to be part of. I wanted him to know that I wouldn't be a passive victim any longer. I was ready to fight back. As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, an idea began to blossom in my mind. I thought of all the times we had shared a laugh over some shared community event, of how we had been in close proximity, completely unaware of the dark side of his character. It would be poetic, almost fulfilling, to show him the consequences of his actions, not just in a physical way, but emotionally too. I remembered how our neighborhood had a tradition of community potlucks every month. Everyone was always encouraged to bring a dish, and it was a good way to bond, to maintain that facade of kindness. But this time, I would turn that tradition on its head. I would make it an event he would never forget. I started planning my dish, a delectable chocolate cake with a surprise ingredient. An ingredient that would definitely ruin someone's appetite: laxatives. I had done my research, it would be hard to detect and wouldn't cause any permanent damage, just an embarrassing night he would remember. It was a sickening thought, but I was filled with a rush of exhilaration. I could almost visualize his face as he took a bite and grimaced, realizing he had bitten off more than he could chew, just like I had when he stole from me. The night of the potluck arrived, and I was a whirlwind of nerves and excitement. I dressed carefully, making sure I looked the part of the friendly neighbor, ready to serve my chocolate cake like it was the pièce de résistance of the evening. I pretended everything was fine, laughing with Sarah and Mr. Thompson as they praised my baking skills. But inside, I was a storm, every laugh a reminder of the calm before the chaos I was about to unleash. When he finally arrived, I felt the energy in the room shift. He entered with that same carefree demeanor, flashing smiles at people who had no idea of his true nature. I could feel the anger bubbling beneath my surface, but I kept it in check as I casually approached him, my heart racing. I had carefully crafted my plan, and now it was time to set it in motion. With each step toward him, I felt a mix of triumph and trepidation. The potluck was buzzing with laughter and the clinking of forks, but for me, the world had narrowed down to just him. I approached casually, my smile in place, determined to keep my composure as I offered him a slice of my chocolate cake. "Hey, Jake. You have to try this. I made it special for the potluck," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos brewing inside me. He flashed that infuriatingly charming smile, and for a brief moment, I felt the same foolish trust I once had. But that fleeting sentiment dissipated quickly as he took the slice from my hands, completely oblivious to what awaited him. As the evening progressed, I made sure to keep my distance while still keeping an eye on him. I chatted with other neighbors, feigning casual interest in their lives while my mind was racing with anticipation. I could see him enjoying the cake, and each laugh he let out made my heart pound. Was he suspicious? Did he suspect me? I needed to stay calm. I reminded myself that this was just a small price he had to pay for his betrayal. I had no intention of ruining his life, but I wanted him to feel a fraction of what I had felt when he took my camera. About 30 minutes in, I noticed him grabbing a drink from the table, his eyes wide as he spoke with a friend about how amazing the cake tasted. That's when I felt the first wave of satisfaction course through me. He genuinely thought he was safe, that he could waltz through our neighborhood with impunity. But I wasn't done yet. A few minutes later, I saw him pause mid-conversation, his expression shifting from jovial to confused. He placed a hand on his stomach, and I could feel a grin creeping onto my face. That was it, the moment I had been waiting for. "Everything okay, Jake?" I called out, feigning concern as I approached. "You don't look so good." I could feel Sarah's eyes on me, and I shot her a warning glance, silently pleading her to play along. I think I need to step outside for a minute," he stammered, clutching his abdomen. As he made his way toward the door, I felt a surge of adrenaline rush through me. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for. Jake stumbled outside, and I followed, my heart pounding in my chest. I could already hear the murmurs of the other guests, the concerned whispers echoing through the air. "Is he okay? What happened?" But I was focused on him, my package thief, my betrayer, now on the brink of his own reckoning. As I stepped onto the porch, I caught a glimpse of him leaning against the railing, his face pale and drenched in sweat. His charming facade was cracking, and in that instant, I couldn't help but feel a wave of satisfaction mixed with a tinge of guilt. I had wanted him to feel vulnerable, and now he was. I had to remind myself, though, that this was all part of the plan, to make him understand the weight of his actions. "Jake, are you sure you're all right?" I asked, my voice dripping with faux concern. "You really seem to love that cake." He let out a groan, doubling over slightly, and I could barely contain my excitement. "I don't know what's happening. I just feel awful." He looked at me, his eyes wide and almost desperate. "Did you put something in that cake?" "Oh, come on," I said with a feigned laugh, stepping closer. "It's just a chocolate cake. I promise you, it's delicious. I wouldn't do anything to hurt you." I relished the irony in my words. Because I wasn't hurting him physically, not really, instead, I was delivering justice, and it felt intoxicating. He leaned back against the railing, clutching his stomach tighter. I could see him struggling, the realization dawning on his face that he had underestimated me. This was the moment I had been waiting for, a taste of poetic justice. Suddenly, he bolted toward the front yard, and I followed closely behind, my heart racing, the thrill of the chase invigorating me. As he stumbled into the grass, he lost his balance, falling to his knees. I couldn't help but let out a small, triumphant gasp. It felt surreal, almost cinematic. A cliché moment in a movie where the villain finally gets what he deserves. Around us, more neighbors had started to notice, their heads turning in confusion and concern. The laughter and chatter from inside the potluck faded into an eerie silence as neighbors began to witness Jake's embarrassing downfall. I stood there, a mix of exhilaration and guilt coursing through my veins while I watched him writhe on the lawn, desperately trying to regain his composure. It wasn't just my heart that felt heavy in that moment, it was the weight of what I had orchestrated, the consequences of my thirst for revenge. Jake's friends rushed over, concern etched on their faces, as they helped him up and led him away from the scene. I could hear snippets of their conversation, murmurs of "what's wrong? And did he eat something off?" That made my stomach churn. Was this really worth it? I thought about my friends, my community, the very people I had wanted to protect. And yet here I was, standing on the sidelines of my own chaos. The night continued without me. I retreated into the shadows of my porch, heart racing but still unsettled. The thrill of my plan had dissipated, replaced with the stark reality of what I had done. I watched as people gathered around Jake, their expressions torn between concern and amusement. Was I the villain in this story? Had I crossed a line that should have remained untouched? The laughter had returned inside the house, but it felt hollow to me now. I was no longer part of the joyful community event. Instead, I felt like a ghost, haunting the very place I had called home. A few of the neighbors came over, eyeing me with uncertainty, perhaps starting to piece together that I was at the heart of Jake's sudden affliction. In the days that followed, the story of Jake's misadventure became the neighborhood gossip. My guilt morphed into shame as I realized how much I wanted to fade into the background. The initial thrill of revenge had paled in comparison to the reality of my actions. As I watched people tiptoe around me, their eyes filled with pity and disdain, I couldn't help but reflect on what I had sacrificed, my integrity and my place in this tight-knit community. Sarah was the first to confront me. We were sitting on my porch one afternoon, her face soft with sympathy but her words sharp. "Kim, what were you thinking? Did he really deserve that? Didn't he?" I shot back, the anger flaring up again.
You know, they say that when a relationship crumbles, it's like watching a slow-motion train wreck. You stand there, helpless, unable to intervene. I remember the day everything changed, the moment I became a shadow of the woman I used to be. It was an ordinary Wednesday afternoon. Sunlight streamed through the slats of the blinds, casting jagged lines across our living room floor. I could hear the faint hum of traffic outside, the distant laughter of children playing in the street, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing inside my own home. His name is Jake. I can't say it without a bitter taste in my mouth, like I've swallowed a mouthful of ash. He was everything I thought I wanted. Charming, ambitious, with a kind of smile that could light up the darkest corners of my mind. I was drawn to him like a moth to a flame, but, as it turns out, flames burn, and he was a fire that consumed everything in its path. The first few months were a whirlwind of romance. Candlelit dinners, spontaneous road trips, promises whispered under the stars. But it wasn't long before the shine began to fade, revealing the jagged edges of his personality. I should have seen the signs, the way his laughter could morph into anger in the blink of an eye, how he often blamed others for his shortcomings, especially when it came to me. It began with little jabs, a slight criticism here, a dismissive comment there. I laughed them off, convincing myself that he was just passionate, that he cared deeply. But then the cracks widened, and I found myself tiptoeing around his moods, like a soldier navigating a minefield. And then came the betrayal, the moment that shattered whatever illusion of safety I had left. I'll never forget the gut-wrenching feeling of checking his phone, my heart pounding like a war drum. I wasn't the type to snoop. Trust had always been the foundation of our relationship. But there it was, a name, a message, an intimate conversation that shattered the fragile remnants of my heart. Jessica. That name echoed in my mind like a death knell, piercing through the layers of denial I had wrapped around myself. I confronted him, my voice trembling, my hands shaking. His face twisted in a mask of feigned innocence, and I could see it, the flicker of amusement in his eyes, as if I were a child caught in a game I didn't even know we were playing. The argument escalated, and I felt the familiar sting of his words, dripping with condescension and disdain. "You're lucky to have me," he spat, "no one else would put up with your drama." That was the moment I realized, I was not just a victim of infidelity, I was ensnared in an abusive cycle that left me gasping for air. What's worse, I had become a stranger to myself, a mere reflection in the mirror, unable to recognize the woman staring back. But amidst the despair, something ignited in me, a flicker of defiance that was all too familiar. You see, this story is not just about a love lost, it's about the awakening of a fierce spirit that refuses to be crushed. I won't reveal everything just yet, there are darker layers to this tale, and trust me, you'll want to hear them. But know this, revenge is a dish best served cold, and I was ready to make it a feast. The days following the confrontation with Jake felt like a chaotic whirlwind, each moment dragging me deeper into an abyss of confusion and heartbreak. I still replayed that day in my mind, a broken record of his mocking laughter, and the way he had twisted my feelings into knots I couldn't untangle. I remember pacing the small apartment we had shared, the walls closing in around me as I tried to comprehend what had happened. How could he do this to me? Was I so blind? The nagging questions clawed at my insides, tearing away at the remnants of my self-worth. I was thrust into a reality where love morphed into betrayal, where the man I had cherished became a specter of deceit. "You're lucky to have me," he had said, and those words echoed into the depths of my soul, a poison that seeped into my thoughts. I found myself caught in a sick cycle of disbelief. I would wake up each morning, momentarily free from the weight of betrayal, only to remember the messages I had seen, her flirty texts, the way they spoke about me in hushed tones, as if I was an afterthought in a story they were both writing. I started to document everything. I was the detective in my own tragic love story, piecing together clues that painted a picture I was both desperate to understand and terrified to believe. I discovered more. Photos of them at coffee shops, arms draped around each other, smiles that could rival the fake ones Jake had given me in the good days. How had I not noticed how his phone buzzed more often when he was around her? Or how his laughter was more genuine with her than it ever was with me? Those realizations cut like a knife, each one another wound I had to carry. I remember sitting on the bathroom floor, tears streaming down my cheeks as I clutched my phone, the screen illuminated with evidence of my own heartbreak. I found myself returning to that same spot on the floor, day after day, feeling more like a prisoner in my own life. The flashes of anger were new to me, anger at him, at her, but mostly at myself for allowing it to happen. I would stare at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, searching for the woman I used to be, the one who laughed easily and danced freely without a ghost of betrayal lurking behind her. Instead, I saw someone shattered, fragments of my identity scattered like broken glass. And then, there was the ever-deafening silence. I began to notice how Jake's rage manifested when I refused to engage with him after the confrontation. His anger boiled over like a pot left to simmer for too long. I felt it in the weight of his presence, the way he would loom over me, demanding attention, as if I owed him my unwavering loyalty despite the reality of his infidelity. "You're being dramatic," he would say, dismissing my pain with a wave of his hand, and each dismissive word stung like a fresh slap in the face. I began to withdraw, step by step, night by night, feeling the energy drain from me as I became increasingly aware of the emotional manipulation surrounding me. I was fighting to survive in this toxic atmosphere, where my heartbreak was reduced to a mere annoyance. Confusion turned to anger, anger ignited an ember of rage. The idea of revenge simmered quietly, but it felt like a distant dream, something to hold on to as I grappled with the injustice of it all. The deeper I dug into his betrayal, the more I uncovered, a tangled web of lies that had been spun around my once innocent heart. Each new discovery felt like a fresh wound, reopening the scars I was desperately trying to heal. I started replaying every moment, every conversation we had, searching for signs I had missed, desperate to understand how I had ended up here. The laughter we shared now felt laced with poison, and every tender gesture felt like a cruel joke. I remember one evening vividly, the sky bruised with dusk as I sat alone at a local cafe, pretending to sip my lukewarm coffee. I scrolled through my phone, numb to the world around me, when I saw it, a selfie Jake had posted with Jessica. They were beaming, Faces inches apart, the smile on his lips told a story that my heart couldn't bear to decipher. The caption read, "Living my best life with my favorite person." My stomach churned as embarrassment washed over me. I felt exposed, like I was standing naked in front of an audience while everyone pointed and laughed. I wasn't just the jilted lover, I was the punchline to a joke I had never asked to be a part of. Amidst that crushing humiliation, I felt the sting of isolation creeping in, wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. Friends began to notice my withdrawn demeanor. I could see their concerned glances, their whispered conversations, but I couldn't bear to share my pain. I felt like a burden, and the shame of my situation chained me to silence. The happy hours turned into awkward meetings where I forced smiles while my insides rotted away. I felt like a ghost, drifting through the remnants of my social life while Jake continued to flaunt his new relationship, unbothered by the wreckage he had left behind. Jake's friends, once my friends too, began to side with him. When I shared snippets of my hurt, I was met with patronizing chuckles and reassurances that he's just a guy being a guy. Their dismissive tone ignited a fire within me, intensifying my sense of betrayal. I found myself yearning for the company of those who understood my pain, but instead, I was met with indifferent nods and pitying eyes. I felt like the villain in my own story, a pariah in a world that once embraced me. The isolation reached a peak when I decided to confront my best friend, Sarah. I confided in her about everything, hoping for a shred of support. But what I got instead was an uncomfortable silence, followed by her hesitant admonishment of my actions. "You shouldn't have gone through this phone," she said softly, as if I were the guilty party. I felt my heart sink, crushed under the weight of her judgment. It was as if the walls were closing in, trapping me in a reality where even my closest allies were turning their backs, leaving me to fend for myself in an endless night of despair. It was during one of those long nights, tossing and turning in bed, that I started to plot my revenge. I could feel the anger bubbling beneath the surface, the rage I had suppressed for so long finally forcing its way out. I envisioned the moment I would confront him, my fists clenched, my heart racing with the adrenaline of betrayal turned into power. But it would take time and cunning. I would need to be strategic. I needed something concrete, a way to turn the tables, a way to make them feel the weight of their actions. As the days turned into weeks, a plan began to form in my mind. I started to gather evidence, screenshots of their conversations, photos of their time together, anything I could use against him. With the flickering light of my laptop illuminating my darkened room, I felt a surge of purpose I hadn't experienced in months. I was no longer just a passive victim, I was a woman on a mission, and it felt exhilarating. The turning point came on an ordinary Friday night. I had been up late, scrolling through social media when I stumbled upon a post from Jake, shared publicly for the world to see. It was a photo of him and Jessica at a lavish party, their arms intertwined, grinning like they had just conquered the world. I could feel my heart drop into the pit of my stomach as I read the comments from his friends, lauding him for his catch. I was shaking with a mix of sorrow and rage, and I slammed my laptop shut, the sound echoing throughout the silent room. That's when it hit me like a thunderbolt. I was done being the punchline in their twisted little love story. I looked around my dimly lit space, the remnants of our shared life cluttered in corners, photos of happier times staring back at me. My eyes landed on something that sent a chill down my spine, the framed picture of us at the beach, full of laughter, capturing a moment when I actually believed in our love. In that instant, the memory of his last words seeped in, echoing like a taunting chorus in my mind, "You're lucky to have me." No, I was done feeling lucky. I would take back my power. I needed to show him that his actions had consequences, that I was not just some side character in their story. I was the protagonist, and it was time to write my own ending. Fueled by adrenaline, I sprang into action. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through the pictures I had saved. Each image I had collected felt like a tiny victory, a stepping stone towards my freedom. I meticulously organized the evidence, screenshots of his text exchanges, the photos of their outings, all the little moments he had shared publicly while he had me masked in the shadows. I could feel the heat of determination rising within me as I created a folder, labeling it with a name that made me smirk, Jake's True Colors. But the plan needed more than just evidence. I needed a way to weave the truth into a narrative that would hit them both where it hurt, their carefully curated images of happiness. The idea crystallized in my mind like ice forming on still water. I would confront him, but not just for myself. I would expose him to everyone who had been fooled by his charm, a public acknowledgement of his deceit. I envisioned sending an anonymous message to his friends, sharing the evidence and revealing the facade he had created. The final straw came when I overheard him on the phone one evening, laughing about how easy it was to manipulate me. I stood frozen behind the half-closed door, my heart racing as he bragged to someone about how I was too emotional to ever leave him. It was as if every fiber of my being was ignited by indignation. The reality of my situation became crystal clear. He had built a narrative around me, one that painted me as unstable and needy, while he strutted around as the misunderstood hero. At that moment, I realized I was done being afraid. The anger that had simmered beneath the surface erupted like a volcano, and all my fears melted away into determination. I would not just confront Jake, I would dismantle his carefully crafted illusion. I would take back my narrative, and I would do it on my own terms. I felt a rush of exhilaration as I plotted. I would gather this is where my detailed plan began to take shape, a meticulous blueprint designed not just to sting, but to dismantle the very foundation Jake had built his new relationship upon. It was time to flip the script, and I was ready to play my part. Here's how I envisioned it all unfolding. Step 1, evidence collection. I had already begun this process, but it was time to go all in. I meticulously scoured my phone for every shred of evidence that could help me. Screenshots of their flirty text exchanges, Instagram posts, Snapchat stories, they all went into their own folder titled Jake's True Colors. I wanted to ensure I had not just proof of his infidelity, but also material that highlighted his manipulation. I had to be careful not to draw attention to myself. I didn't want Jake to grow suspicious as I gathered this information. It meant I had to act naturally, engaging with my friends and maintaining a facade, even as I plotted in secret. Step 2, assemble my team. I needed allies who understood my plight and could help me execute my plan. I reached out to 2 close friends, Mia and Alex, people who had witnessed the unraveling of my relationship firsthand. Over coffee, I laid out my plan, showing them the evidence I had amassed. Their shock quickly transformed into support, and I could see the fire igniting within them too. Would they be willing to risk their friendship with Jake? I feared they might hesitate, wrestling with loyalties. But when I recounted the ways he had dismissed my pain and manipulated our circle, they were ready to back me up. Step 3, the social media setup. At this stage, I knew that the best way to expose Jake was through social media, his playground. I created a fake account using an alias that was just plausible enough to be believed. Armed with my collection of damning evidence, I began crafting a series of messages that would strategically unveil the truth to his friends. The messages would be timed to hit right when they were active, utilizing a mix of screenshots and personal anecdotes about my relationship with Jake. "Hey, I thought you all should know what your friend has been up to." I could almost hear his heart dropping when he realized it would be impossible to silence me. There was a risk of being unmasked. If Jake or Jessica managed to trace the account back to me, my entire plan could blow up in my face. I had to be cautious, carefully curating my posts and keeping my anonymity intact. Step 4, the confrontation. The next phase was the nerve-wracking confrontation. I decided I would wait for the weekend when he would be out with friends, soaking in the glow of his new relationship. I planned to show up at a bar where they often hung out, armed with my evidence, ready to unveil the truth not just to him, but to a crowd of people who had been deceived. When the moment came, I would create a commotion, drawing attention to myself. I envisioned Jake's face when he saw me, the disbelief washing over him as I pulled out my phone, displaying the incriminating screenshots of his exchanges with Jessica. "Is this who you wanted to be?" I would demand, my voice steady despite the tremor of rage bubbling within me. "This is who you really are." There was a chance he wouldn't react as I hoped. He might try to downplay my accusations or spin the narrative to make me look crazy. I had to prepare myself for every possible outcome, ensuring I could maintain control over the situation. Climax, the execution of revenge. The night arrived, thick with tension. I slipped into a black dress that hugged my figure, a symbol of my regained confidence. I took a deep breath, ensuring my phone was tucked away, screenshots ready to unleash. The dim lights of the bar flickered above me as I scanned the room, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. I spotted him immediately, Jake, laughter erupting from his lips, Jessica's hand intertwined with his. They looked like a perfect couple, and it made my stomach churn. I felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it. I fought through the waves of anxiousness and made my way towards them, my friends Mia and Alex trailing slightly behind. The closer I got, the more I focused on a fury that had been building within me, a fire that had simmered for far too long. As I approached, I caught the glimmer of surprise on Jake's face when he spotted me. I could see the moment he realized something was off, his laughter faltered, and his smile faded. Jessica's face twisted in confusion, a shadow of doubt flickering in her eyes. I cleared my throat, a smile plastered on my face that felt more like a snarl. "Jake," I said, my voice cutting through the noise like a knife. "We need to talk." He blinked, disbelieving, glancing at Jessica, who looked ready to burst with curiosity. "What are you doing here?" He stammered, feigning nonchalance. "Just wanted to remind you of who you really are," I replied, pulling out my phone and holding it up for everyone to see. "You remember these, don't you?" I scrolled through the evidence I had meticulously collected, each screenshot illuminating the truth like a flash of light in a dark room. I could see the color drain from his face. The bar, once filled with laughter, began to fall silent. Faces turned towards us, drawn in like moths to a flame, curious about the unfolding drama. My friends stood back, watching, ready to support me, and I felt a palpable shift in the atmosphere. The tension was electric, vibrating through the crowd. Jake leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "What the hell is this?" he snapped, but his forced bravado didn't mask the tremor in his voice. I continued scrolling, flipping through the text that showcased his betrayal. "Can't wait for our date next week?" I read aloud, my tone dripping with mockery. Or how about, "You make me feel alive like she never could." Sound familiar? Each word was a dagger, aimed not just at him but at the facade he had created. Gasps echoed around me, and I felt the weight of all those eyes on us, every eager listener drawn deeper into the chaos unfolding before them. I could see the confusion on Jessica's face morphing into anger, her trust unraveling with every word I spoke. "Look," Jake began, his voice rising in an attempt to regain control, "this is just a misunderstanding." "Is it?" I shot back, my anger boiling over. "You think I'm the petty ex here? You've had me living in shadows while you paraded this lie around. You think I wouldn't find out?" My heart raced, but I pressed on, throwing every ounce of anguish I had bottled up back at him. "You're not just a liar, Jake. You're a coward." His face contorted, the anger within him flaring. The cacophony of shock and whispers erupted in the bar as I laid bare the truth, each revelation striking Jake like a tidal wave. The discomfort on his face was palpable, shifting from anger to bewilderment as he struggled to regain control of the narrative. I could see Jessica's eyes darting between us, the spark of doubt igniting her trust in him, and part of me relished the moment. The truth was a weapon, and I wielded it like a sword, cutting through the lies he had spun around us all. As the crowd began to murmur, I felt a sense of liberation washing over me, the years of fear and manipulation melting away like ice in the sun. The weight of my heartbreak felt lighter, replaced by the exhilarating rush of reclaiming my story. But in that moment of triumph, a dark realization pierced through the veil of my victory. The fallout wouldn't just affect him, it would ripple through our shared lives, dissecting friendships and revealing hidden loyalties. In the days that followed, the consequences began to unfold. Jake's rage erupted like a volcano, spewing venomous threats and desperate attempts to frame me as the instigator. "You're crazy. This is a false narrative," he shouted at me in a public confrontation the day after the bar incident, his face twisted in fury. But I stood my ground, my heart steady in the face of his wrath. I had unveiled his mask, I wouldn't let him put it back on. However, the reality began to shift like sand beneath my feet. Friends I thought were loyal started to distance themselves. Some unfollowed me on social media, while others sent me half-hearted messages asking for peace. It felt as though a rift had formed, a chasm that widened every time I heard laughter echoing from the group I had once felt a part of. Jake's influence was potent, He had filled their ears with his version of the narrative, a twisted tale that painted me as the villain in this saga. As I sat alone at home one evening, scrolling through the memories that lingered on my phone, I felt the shadows of isolation creep in again. The heavy cloak of loneliness wrapped around me, thicker than before. I had sought revenge, but now I was grappling with the emotional wreckage left in its wake. I found myself staring at the framed picture of us once again. The irony of it all didn't escape me. It was a reminder of who I had been, a woman that felt whole, loved, and cherished. The woman who was now an outcast. Surprisingly, it was during this time of solitude that I began to piece together what closure truly meant for me. Revenge had felt intoxicating, but it didn't fill the void of betrayal or mend the friendships that had splintered. I realized I didn't need to hold on to resentment, I could let it go. I began to channel my energy into healing instead, working out, journaling, attending therapy sessions where I could finally be heard without judgment. I surrounded myself with those who truly saw me for who I was, not who Jake had depicted. It was months later that I found myself unexpectedly running into Sarah, my best friend who had distanced herself after the fallout. In that moment, I was prepared for hostility, for her to return to the narrative Jake had spun, but instead, I felt a tremor of hope. She approached me, her head bowed, and with a shaky breath, she admitted, "I believed him, but I see it now. I should have stood by you." That moment of honesty touched a tender spot in my heart. It was a night like any other when my world began to unravel. I remember sitting on my bed, the faint glow of my fairy lights flickering against the walls of my small studio apartment. It was supposed to feel cozy, the kind of sanctuary where I could escape the chaos of life. But that night, the laughter I'd shared with friends earlier faded into a haunting silence, and my phone buzzed with a message that would change everything. His name was Alex. We had been together for 2 years, and I thought I knew him inside and out. He was charming, with that effortless smile that could light up a room and a way of making me feel like I was the only person that mattered in the universe. I fell for him hard, lost in the whirlwind of young love and late-night conversations that stretched until dawn. But beneath that charming facade, something much darker lurked, hidden away like a secret I was too naive to see. Our relationship had started off like a dream: dinner dates, spontaneous road trips, and quiet evenings cuddled up on the couch. But as the months rolled by, little things began to change. The late-night texts, the sudden need for space, and the way he'd look at his phone, eyes darting away whenever I walked into the room, it was as if I was watching a slow-motion train wreck, powerless to stop it. I dismissed my instincts, brushing them off as paranoia or insecurities. But the night I received that message, everything came crashing down. It was from a number I didn't recognize, and the words carved through me like a knife. "You deserve to know, he's been seeing someone else. And I think you should get tested." My heart raced, disbelief morphing into a painful knot in my stomach. As if that wasn't enough, the weight of the additional revelation crushed me: an STD. The words echoed in my mind, words that felt like they were written in blood. An infection. A betrayal that went beyond anything I could have imagined. In that moment, the comfort of my little sanctuary felt suffocating. I tossed the phone aside and buried my face in my hands, tears streaming down my cheeks. Anger coursed through my veins like fire, mingled with an intense sense of betrayal. How could he? After everything we shared, how could he do this to me? I felt the dizzying spiral of heartbreak, betrayal, and rage culminating in one searing truth: I needed to take back control. And so, I made a promise to myself that night, a promise to reclaim my power, to ensure that no one else would have to endure the pain I felt. I was done being a victim, and I was ready to make him pay for every lie, every hidden moment, and every ounce of trust he shattered. This is my story. A tale of heartbreak and discovery, but also one of cunning revenge. Truth be told, when the dust finally settles, you're about to learn that sometimes the most powerful weapon you can wield is the truth itself. The next few days passed in a haze, a whirlwind of emotions I couldn't control. I remember lying awake through the early hours, heart racing while replaying every memory I had of Alex, dissecting them like a forensic analyst trying to find clues to a crime he hadn't seen coming. I felt sick thinking about the intimate moments we shared, the laughter, the late-night confessions, the promises made under the starlit sky. All those memories felt tainted now, poisoned by his betrayal. I was spiraling. The image of him with someone else, laughing and kissing her. Did he kiss her the way he kissed me? Did he whisper sweet nothings in her ear, just like he used to do with me? The jealousy clawed at my insides, tearing through the pain like a vengeful beast. But it wasn't just jealousy, it was the crushing weight of humiliation. I felt like an absolute fool, a marionette dancing on strings he'd yanked with careless abandon. After a long, sleepless night, I finally mustered the courage to see a doctor. The sterile smell of the clinic was a stark contrast to the chaos roiling in my mind, and when the nurse handed me the results, I felt like the world had stopped spinning. There it was, a diagnosis that would forever change the way I viewed intimacy, the way I viewed trust. I felt like I was holding a ticking time bomb. The bomb was my heart, and the countdown to my revenge had officially begun. It was time to confront him. I set a plan in motion, fueled by righteous anger and a burning desire for revenge. I texted Alex, craftily crafting my words to sound casual. "Hey, can we talk? There's something important I need to discuss." When he replied almost immediately, giddy and eager, it was like a switch flipped inside me. I was no longer that vulnerable girl who had given her heart to him. The vulnerability was replaced by a cold, steely resolve. He suggested we meet at our favorite cafe, and I could already picture the look on his face when everything unraveled. The thought of the confrontation sent a thrill through me, the sweet taste of poetic justice. As I sat at the cafe, sipping a lukewarm cup of coffee, I rehearsed what I wanted to say. The people around me were blissfully unaware of the storm brewing inside, but I was center stage in my own personal play, and I was ready for my monologue. Finally, the door swung open, and there he was, bright-eyed and unaware. It took everything within me not to smile at his unsuspecting demeanor. "Hey!" He beamed, sliding into the seat across from me. "You look different. Everything okay?" That innocent concern almost made my blood boil. "Everything's just peachy, Alex," I said, barely hiding the sarcasm that dripped from my words. "In fact, I just got back from the doctor." His brow furrowed in confusion as I watched the color drain from his face when I revealed the truth. "What do you mean?" He stuttered, a mixture of shock and panic flashing in his eyes. "What are you talking about?" I leaned forward, relishing the moment. "You know exactly what I mean. I got a message from someone who knows you better than I did. They told me to get tested, and guess what I found out?" The reality of what I was saying hit him like a freight train. I relished the way his confident demeanor crumbled before me like a house of cards. "You're being dramatic," he finally muttered, but there was a tremor in his voice that betrayed his efforts to maintain composure. The facade was slipping, and I didn't need his admission to know I had him cornered. "I'm being dramatic?" I echoed, my tone low and dangerous. "You think this is a joke? Do you even realize the implications of what you've done? You gave me an STD, Alex. You cheated on me. You shattered the trust I had in you, in us." His jaw clenched, and the color drained from his face. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he mumbled, but the feeble apology rang hollow. It was too late for remorse, it fell flat against the weight of my anger. "Didn't mean to hurt me?" I couldn't help but laugh, a sharp, bitter sound that seemed to echo in the otherwise cozy cafe. "You think that excuses everything? You think you can just sweep your betrayals under the rug because you didn't plan it out? You're a coward, Alex." I watched as he squirmed under my gaze, his charm dissolving into a clumsy attempt at damage control. He reached for my hand, but I recoiled as if he had burned me. "Just hear me out." I was confused. I didn't know what I wanted. I was scared. "Scared?" I shot back, incredulous. "You were scared of what? Commitment? Honesty? Because if being in a relationship scared you, you should have had the decency to talk to me about it instead of running off into someone else's arms." The surrounding patrons began to look over, glancing at our escalating confrontation. I relished the moment, the spotlight shining on us, and I leaned into it. "Did she make you feel like a man, Alex? Did she make you feel wanted? Because I bet she didn't have the faintest idea that you were still with me." His expression transformed from panic to defensiveness. "You don't know her. You're making this about her when it's about us." That was the moment I snapped. It's about you, Alex. It's always been about you. I leaned back, crossing my arms defiantly. But this isn't just about our relationship anymore. I'm not just some girl you can play with, I'm done being your emotional punching bag. The realization that he'd lost control began to set in. I could see it in his eyes, the realization that I had turned the tables on him, that I was no longer that heartbroken girl who'd cried herself to sleep, hoping he'd change. You think you can just walk away from this? I continued, my voice steady and cold. You think you can just pretend this never happened? I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who you are. As his eyes widened in shock and fear, I felt a rush of exhilaration. The thought of exposing him, of revealing the truth to anyone who would listen, filled me with a sense of power I hadn't anticipated. Wouldn't it be poetic to bring him to his knees, to lay bare every lie he fed me? Please, don't, he stammered, desperation seeping into his voice. I'll do anything. Just don't tell anyone. The irony wasn't lost on me. He was pleading for mercy after the chaos he'd unleashed in my life. That's the thing, Alex. You can't ask for mercy when you've shown none. I'm not here to negotiate. I'm here to reclaim my life and expose your truth. You took advantage of my trust, and now it's your turn to face the consequences. I leaned in closer, locking eyes with him, savoring the raw emotion that flickered across his face: confusion, guilt, fear. It was a heady mix, intoxicating in a way I had never experienced before. Suddenly, I felt liberated, like I had shed the weight of his betrayal, leaving behind my old self who allowed love to blind her to reality. In that instant, I knew that my revenge didn't just mean telling a few friends or posting on social media. No, I wanted to ensure this lesson lingered with him. I wanted him to feel the humiliation that had wrapped around me like a suffocating shroud. He needed to know that actions had consequences, and I was ready to be the one to make him pay for the trauma he inflicted on me. How does it feel to know that someone out there is waiting to expose you? To see you squirm? To know that the woman you thought was just a fling could very well turn the world against you? I challenged, enjoying the way he recoiled as my words dug deeper. He shook his head, desperate, like a cornered animal. You're being cruel. I didn't want to hurt you. His voice was shaky, a faint echo of the man I once loved. Cruel? I laughed again, this time without any hint of amusement. Cruel is betraying someone who loved you unconditionally. Cruel is letting your selfish desires dictate your actions without a second thought for how it impacts the people in your life. I'm merely giving you a taste of your own medicine. The cafe was buzzing around us, patrons now fully engrossed in our confrontation. I could feel the intensity of their stares, the whispers and side glances that wrapped around us like a cocoon. In that moment, I wasn't just seeking revenge, I was reclaiming my identity, reminding myself that I was worth more than the hurt he had tried to inflict. I'm going to tell your friends, I continued, my voice steady and unwavering. I'll let them know how you've been playing them, how you've been lying about your relationships, keeping secrets like a child hiding their candy. I'll make sure your reputation is forever tainted, and there's nothing you can do about it. The look of horror etched on his face was worth every moment of pain I had endured. It was the turning point I had been waiting for, the moment I realized that the power belonged to me now. I'm not afraid of what you'll do, he blurted out, trying to regain some semblance of control, but I could see the cracks in his bravado. You wouldn't really hurt me like that. I smirked, leaning back, letting the silence linger. Oh, but I will, Alex. You don't know me anymore. You only think you do. And as I sat there, watching the reality of what he had done settle over him in waves, I felt a surge of triumph. There was no going back now. The narrative had shifted. What was once a story of betrayal had transformed into one of empowerment. I stood up, ready to leave him squirming in that cafe, surrounded by onlookers who'd just witnessed a broken relationship unravel in real time. Enjoy the rest of your day, Alex, I said, turning to walk with each step away from the cafe. The adrenaline coursed through me, fueled by a mix of triumph and determination. The confrontation was just the beginning. My revenge plan began to take shape in the back of my mind, each detail carefully orchestrated to ensure Alex realized the full weight of his choices. First and foremost, I needed to collect evidence, solid proof of his deceit. I texted the anonymous tipster who had initially reached out to me. Thank you for telling me about Alex. Can you share more details? I need to know everything. It didn't take long for them to respond, dropping cryptic hints about other girls he'd been seeing, including one who was definitely serious and seemed to know about me. This was just what I needed. If I could gather more names and stories, I could build a case that would leave him exposed for everyone he cared about. Next, I reached out to my own circle of friends. I made a group chat where I could share everything. I carefully crafted my words. Hey everyone, I need to talk. Alex and I recently broke up under shocking circumstances, and it's important that you know the truth. I would love your support. I scheduled a gathering where I could tell them the story in person. I knew that by revealing his betrayal to my friends, I could create an echo of my story that would eventually reach all the people in his life. The goal was to ensure they saw him for who he really was, deceptive and unworthy of trust. For the grand finale, I knew social media would be my stage. I created an anonymous account on a platform where he was quite active, using a name he wouldn't recognize. One night, I meticulously composed a post that would send shockwaves through his friends. Attention, if you're dating Alex, you might want to get tested. After 2 years of being blindsided by his lies, I learned he's been seeing multiple girls behind my back and that he gave me an STD. Don't let his charm fool you, this guy is playing a dangerous game. I included screenshots of our conversations, the text from my anonymous tipster, and even snippets of messages showing his flirtation with other women. It was a calculated move, but I felt confident that the truth needed to be known, and I would make sure it spread like wildfire. As the days passed, I could almost feel the tension mounting around us. I had set everything in motion, and it was a strange mix of excitement and anxiety. I knew the fallout would be monumental. I stashed away my phone in a drawer and chose to engage in self-care, focusing on myself, my health, my hobbies, and my friends. I had to remind myself that this plan was about reclaiming my power and not getting lost in the chaos. The day finally arrived when I was prepared to unleash my plan. I woke up early, giddy with anticipation. I donned my favorite outfit, the one I knew made me feel confident and fierce. The time had come to confront Alex once more, but this time, it would be on my terms. I arranged to meet him at the same cafe, but instead of sitting across from him, I planned to stand at a distance, watching him squirm as he interacted with friends and acquaintances. I wanted to see the moment the post went live, the moment he'd realize everything was crashing down around him. As I entered the cafe, the familiar scent of roasted coffee and pastries wafted through the air, but it felt tainted now, a reminder of the good times that had been irrevocably lost. I spotted him at a corner table, surrounded by a group of mutual friends, laughing and sipping on his usual caramel macchiato. He looked effortlessly charming, yet it struck me how truly superficial that charm was. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was about to unfold. My heart raced as I pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling slightly. I opened the anonymous account and hit post. A surge of exhilaration washed over me as I pressed the button, watching the words fly into the digital ether. The caption read, "Attention, if you're dating Alex, you might want to get tested." After 2 years of being blindsided by his lies, I learned he's been seeing multiple girls behind my back and that he gave me an STD. Don't let his charm fool you, this guy is playing a dangerous game. As the notification flashed across the screen, I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins. It was like standing on the precipice of a roller coaster, waiting for the drop. I quickly tucked my phone away, but the anticipation was electric. Within moments, my instincts proved right. The post started to gain traction, likes, shares, and comments flooding in. I watched as Alex's laughter faltered, his face flashing confusion as he glanced at his phone. I could see the moment his smile faded, replaced by panic as he scrolled through the comments. Friends leaned in closer, their expressions shifting from curiosity to shock. "What the hell is this?" I heard him mutter, his voice barely above a whisper. My heart raced, I felt an intoxicating mixture of fear and excitement at the chaos I had unleashed. I watched as his fingers flew over his screen, trying to respond, to dial me, but it was too late. Each passing second felt like an infinite cascade of poetic justice. "Alex, what's wrong?" one of his friends asked, concern etched across her face. "That's not true," he snapped, his voice rising, drawing even more attention. "It's just some bullshit rumor." But I could see the cracks in his facade deepening, the way his eyes darted around the cafe, searching for allies, for someone to defend him. I reveled in the realization that he was utterly alone, surrounded by friends who were now questioning everything they thought they knew about him. The cafe began to fill with whispers, the air thick with disbelief and judgment. I overheard snippets of conversation around me, people speculating about his character, about the girl he cheated on me with, and the devastating implications of his betrayal. The power I felt was palpable. Alex was being publicly dismantled before everyone's eyes. "Who is she?" another friend asked, her brow furrowing in concern. "Is this true?" "I don't know who it is. It's a lie," he shouted, his desperation growing more apparent. But beneath his panicked attempts to dismiss the truth, I could see the cracks of his confidence widening. I dared a glance at his face, and it was ghostly pale, the weight of the moment crashing down on him. My heart raced with satisfaction. This was the poetic justice I envisioned. Unable to contain myself any longer, I walked closer, feigning nonchalance. But inside, I was a storm. "Hey Alex," I said, my voice cool and steady, slicing through the tension like a knife. The aftermath of that day was a whirlwind of emotions that left me feeling both exhilarated and deeply reflective. I had orchestrated the perfect storm, unveiling the facade Alex had maintained for far too long. The repercussions of my actions rippled through both our lives in ways I hadn't anticipated. As the days turned into weeks, I watched the fallout unfold. Alex's social media accounts were flooded with comments, friends expressing disbelief, others demanding answers. I knew the truth would eventually settle within his circle, but I wasn't prepared for how it would echo throughout our entire community. Word spread fast. Mutual acquaintances approached me with pity in their eyes and disbelief in their voices. "Is it true?" they would ask, their tone heavy with concern. I realized that the wound I had inflicted on Alex was not just physical, it was a public humiliation that would follow him, haunting every interaction he had for months to come. I braced myself for the whispers, the questions swirling around me. Did he really do that? Can you believe it? I even received messages from others who had been in similar situations, thanking me for speaking out. They felt emboldened by my confrontation, empowered to share their own stories of betrayal. I was inadvertently leading a movement of sorts, one that demanded accountability from those who played with hearts and trust. Meanwhile, Alex struggled to regain some semblance of control in his life. I'd see him occasionally, often attempting to maintain a brave face, but the shadows under his eyes told another story. The confidence he once radiated had vanished, replaced by an unease that made him seem foreign to me. Gone was the charming boy who swept me off my feet. In his place stood a man hollowed out by the consequences of his actions. Yet, amidst the triumph of my revenge, I grappled with conflicting emotions. Each time I watched Alex try to laugh off the rumors or explain himself to bewildered friends, the initial thrill of vengeance ebbed away, replaced by a pang of guilt. I had wanted him to feel the sting of betrayal, but did he truly deserve this endless cycle of shame? I found myself reflecting on my own humanity. Did I want to be the person who reveled in someone else's destruction? Was my thirst for revenge worth the toll it took on my conscience? As I navigated these uncomfortable thoughts, I began to understand that vengeance is not a simple concept, it's riddled with complexity and nuance. In the midst of this turmoil, I turned inward, using my experience as a catalyst for personal growth. I sought therapy, determined to unpack the layers of my heartbreak and the anger that had driven my revenge. My therapist encouraged me to view my experience as a journey of self-discovery rather than just a chapter marred by betrayal. I found strength in vulnerability, learning to embrace my emotions, anger, sadness, and ultimately, forgiveness. The process was arduous, but with each session, I chipped away at the bitterness that had taken root in my heart. Slowly, I began to forge a new identity, one not defined by Alex's betrayal but by my resilience in the face of it. Weeks later, after the dust had settled, I encountered Alex again at a mutual friends gathering. The air was thick with tension as our eyes met across the room. I could see the hesitation in his gaze, a mixture of remorse and defiance. As I approached him, my heart raced, but this time, it was for a different reason. I was no.
It's 3 a.m., and the glow from my phone screen feels like the only light left in my life. The quiet of the house surrounds me, a stark contrast to the chaos brewing in my heart. I should be sleeping, but every time I close my eyes, I see them, my husband and her, giggling at some inside joke while I sit at home, oblivious and trusting. I can almost hear her laugh, high-pitched and sweet, as if it could drown out the reality of her existence in our lives. If this was a different time, a different place, maybe I could have brushed it off, chalked it up to bad luck and human frailty. But right now, I feel the urge for justice bubbling within me like molten lava, ready to erupt. Let me set the stage for you. I'm Emma, a 32-year-old mom of 2 beautiful kids who mean the world to me. I've poured my heart and soul into our family for over a decade. I've been the supportive wife, the caretaker, and the partner who believed in the promise of forever. We built a life together, a home with laughter echoing off the walls, a backyard where our children play, and dreams we painted together beneath the stars. But all of that crumbled when I stumbled upon the text messages that shattered my world like broken glass. He, Ryan, my husband, the man I trusted with my everything, had been carrying on an affair with someone I've never met, but whose name feels like acid on my tongue, Lisa. The moment I saw her name flash on his screen, my heart plummeted. I thought I was ready for anything, but the cold reality was like a punch to the gut. I spent hours going back through our history, replaying memories in my mind, piecing together when things had started to unravel. It's terrifying how easily you can be deceived by someone you love. Now, I'm on the brink of unleashing my fury on the very person who thought it was okay to step into my life, to cross boundaries that should have remained sacred. Should I go public? Should I bring the world into my pain? The desire to expose Lisa burns in my chest like wildfire. I want her to feel the weight of my heartbreak, the destruction she's caused, and the betrayal I never saw coming. As I sit here, the clock ticking away the silent hours, I'm torn between rage and despair. I see the 2 faces who turned my life upside down, Ryan's guilt-ridden, confused expression and Lisa's brazen arrogance shining through her social media posts. It's time for the world to know the truth. But first, I need to gather my thoughts and summon the courage to pull the trigger. Should I go through with it? Should I press send on that post that could expose the truth? I can feel my heart racing as I prepare to share my story, to lay bare the reality of my life for all to see. I'm ready to reclaim my narrative, to stand tall in the face of their betrayal. The world won't turn a blind eye to my pain. Not anymore. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife. Each night, I lay in bed next to Ryan, pretending to be asleep while he scrolled through his phone, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in my heart. I had no idea that every time I kissed him goodnight, he was hunting a thrill in someone else's embrace. I remember the moment I confronted him, how the air felt thick and heavy, almost suffocating. The look on his face when I presented the evidence was a mix of shock and guilt, as if I had thrown a bucket of ice water over his head. It was then I realized he was just as much a stranger to me as Lisa was. "Emma, I can explain," he stammered, his voice trembling as if it were about to shatter. I wanted to scream, to throw a lamp at his head, to make him feel the anguish that was radiating off me in waves. Instead, I felt hollow, like a shell of the woman I used to be. My dreams of a perfect family shattered into a million pieces, and with them, any semblance of trust I had in him. Why her? Why Lisa? I wanted to ask him. Was it her laugh that drew him in, or her carefree spirit that made him forget about the weight of our shared years? Was she the embodiment of everything I felt I wasn't anymore? I was just a tired mom trying to balance grocery lists, school drop-offs, and work deadlines while he was out there seeking validation in someone who had no claim on our life. The days turned into a blur of tears and anger. My best friend, Chloe, tried to comfort me, but every kind word felt like rubbing salt into an open wound. "You deserve better, Em," she said, her eyes filled with sympathy. But I felt like a fool for believing in our love story. I could almost hear Lisa's voice in my head, taunting me with her casual confidence. While I was pouring every ounce of myself into raising our kids and keeping the home alive, she was laughing with my husband, enjoying the thrill of something forbidden. I cyber-stalked her, and it made everything worse. Lisa thrived in her glossy, curated world of Instagram posts showcasing brunches, vacations, and cute selfies with Ryan, each one a dagger to my heart. I found a photo of them together, arms intertwined, and it was as if the breath was knocked out of me. The caption, "Life is too short to waste time on anything less than amazing," sparkles emoji, 2 hearts emoji, felt like a cruel joke. Had they ever considered the life we built together? Did she care that her amazing was my nightmare? Every morning, I'd wake up and check his phone, hoping to find something, anything, that could give me answers. I found more messages, more proof of their secretive rendezvous. I was a detective in my own life, piecing together the puzzle of their deceit while I stood on the sidelines, feeling like a spectator in my own marriage. I often thought of my children, their innocent laughter echoing through the halls, oblivious to the turmoil swirling in their mom's heart. I wanted to shield them from the reality of their father's betrayal, but at the same time, my mouth watered at the thought of making Lisa's life as complicated as mine had become. I imagined her embarrassment, the guilt that would seep into her perfect life. I wanted to see her squirm, to know she was not untouchable, that her actions had consequences. It was all-consuming, this need for revenge, an insatiable hunger that gnawed at my soul like a relentless predator. Each day that passed felt heavier than the last, as if I were carrying the weight of a world that no longer cared for my existence. The emotional roller coaster I found myself on was dizzying. One moment, I was a mother trying to keep things together for my children, and the next, I was a woman bent on delivering a reckoning. I started to lose myself in the process. My days were filled with a haze of anger and confusion. I could barely focus at work. My colleagues greeted me with their usual cheery banter, but I was miles away, trapped in a mental prison of betrayal. A small part of me wanted to break down and share my pain, but the other part, the part filled with rage, clenched my jaw and pushed it all down, determined to keep my secret, my plan, and my emotions locked away. As the days turned into weeks, I began to obsess over Lisa. I'd wake up in the early hours of the morning and scroll through her social media profiles, each photo feeling like another punch to the gut. I watched her life unfold like a movie, each post a reminder of what I'd lost. She was a social media influencer, a master of capturing life's best moments. But I saw through it all. I saw the fakeness behind the smiles, the facade of happiness that was built on the foundation of my shattered marriage. The more I saw, the more I ached for revenge. I envisioned her face when the truth came crashing down around her, when her friends and followers found out that she was the homewrecker. I wanted to strip the glamour away, to expose the ugly truth hidden behind her perfectly curated life. In my mind, I started to draft the post that would reveal her secrets, my fingers itching to type the words that would rip her world apart. But life has a way of throwing curveballs. Just when I thought I couldn't feel worse, it did. One evening, I overheard Ryan on a phone call while I was washing the dishes. The sound of water splashing around me drowned out his words. But every now and then, I heard Lisa's name and my heart stopped. For a few fleeting seconds, I was paralyzed, my hands gripping the sink tightly, knuckles white. "Yeah, I miss you too," he said, his voice smooth and casual, as if he were discussing the weather. "We can figure out the details later. Just give me a little time, all right?" I felt the rage boil in my veins, hot and consuming. It was one thing to have a fleeting affair, but to hear him talking to her like that, like she was the one who mattered most, it sent me spiraling. I stopped washing the dishes and leaned against the counter, my heart racing as I fought the urge to confront him right then and there. The facade was crumbling, I could feel it. The anguish twisted in my stomach like a knife, deepening with each syllable. The next night, I stumbled across a text that would mark the tipping point. "Can't wait to be with you again this weekend. Just us." I felt like I had been shot. The urgency of their plans felt like a declaration of war against the life we built together. I was no longer just a wronged wife, I was a warrior preparing for battle. I turned to Chloe, desperate to share my pain. "I can't do this anymore," I confessed, my voice cracking as I held back tears. "I can't keep pretending everything is fine when I'm falling apart." Chloe looked at me, her eyes wide with understanding as the gravity of my heartache sank in. "Emma, you deserve to be happy. You have every right to stand up for yourself. You can't just let them get away with this." Her words were like a lifeline thrown into the turbulent sea of my emotions, pulling me back from the brink of despair. But what did that mean? What did standing up for myself look like when I had been so profoundly disrespected? That night, as I lay awake with my heart pounding in my chest, the truth began to crystallize. I couldn't keep living in a state of paralysis, trapped in my own mind, replaying the endless loop of betrayal and hurt. I felt the fire igniting within me, raw and powerful, and suddenly it all clicked. I wasn't just a victim, I was a force to be reckoned with. I pulled out my phone, the screen shining in the darkness like a beacon. I began to type, my fingers moving almost of their own accord. My heart raced with each word, as if I were pouring molten rage onto the screen. I had never been one to seek conflict, but this wasn't just about me anymore, it was about reclaiming my power, my dignity. The words flowed out like water from a broken dam. To those who think they can step into my life and steal joy that's not theirs to take, let me remind you that the truth always finds a way out. You might think you're living the dream, but it will all come crashing down. I refuse to be silent while you play house with my husband. I paused, breathless, as I read over my message. Each sentence felt like a small victory, a rebellion against years of quiet suffering. But it wasn't just a post. It was a testament to my strength, a declaration of war against the lies that had invaded my life. I realized I wanted Lisa to feel the weight of her actions, to confront the consequences of her choices. I wanted her to know that she was no longer a shadow lurking in the corners of my life, she was front and center, and I was ready to take a stand. As I hovered over the post button, I felt a surge of adrenaline course through me. The fear was still there, a nagging doubt that whispered about the fallout, the damage this could unleash. But the voice of anger was louder, the urge for justice more persuasive. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about reclaiming my narrative, about letting the world know that I wouldn't be a victim any longer. In that moment, I made the decision that would change everything. I would no longer be the quiet, hurt wife, nursing my wounds in solitude. I would boldly share my story, my truth, and in doing so, I would begin to heal. I envisioned Lisa seeing the post, her smug smile turning to disbelief, panic, and ultimately shame. I imagined the looks on her friends' faces as they read the words I had crafted with so much pain. My finger hovered over the screen, my heart racing with excitement and fear. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes for a second, and then pressed send. The moment the words went live, it felt as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I sat there, staring at the screen, my heart pounding as the reality of my decision set in. I had taken a leap into the unknown, a leap that felt terrifying yet exhilarating. Suddenly, the doubt that had plagued me for so long began to dissipate, replaced by a surge of empowerment as dawn broke, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. I sat in the quiet of my kitchen, the adrenaline still coursing through me. My heart was racing, my hands trembling with both fear and excitement. The post was live. I could hardly believe it. I knew I had to prepare for the aftermath, my revenge plan was in motion, and I needed to be strategic about it. 1. Document everything. The first step was a no-brainer. I began compiling everything related to Ryan and Lisa's affair, screenshots of texts, photos of their social media interactions, and even timestamps from our shared family calendar that pointed to his lies. I wanted concrete evidence to back up my claims, should anyone question the validity of what I was about to expose. It was important for me to have this arsenal of proof, not just to protect myself, but to serve as a reminder of the reality I was living. 2. Enlist allies. I reached out to a few close friends, those who had seen the cracks in my marriage before I did. I needed support, both emotionally and logistically. Chloe was my first call. I did it, I said, my voice quaking with a mix of victory and fear. I posted about them. I need you to help me spread the word. She promised to share my post and encourage others to do the same. The more people who knew, the more power I'd reclaim over the narrative. I also contacted a few trusted acquaintances of Ryan's, people who had always seen our family as a unit. I wanted them to hear my side before Ryan could spin his own narrative to make himself look like the victim. 3. Create a countdown. I knew I had to time the fallout perfectly. I calculated the weekend when Ryan would next be free from work and scheduled to see Lisa again. I wanted to ensure that my post was fresh in everyone's minds when they came together. I imagined their plans spiraling into chaos as they realized that I had blown the lid off their secret. I envisioned Ryan's face when he discovered that the people he trusted the most had turned against him, armed with my truth. I was going to infiltrate their weekend plans and turn it into my own version of a friendly gathering, one filled with witnesses to the fallout. 4. Prepare for confrontation. I knew that I needed to confront Ryan head-on after the post went viral. I started rehearsing what I would say, crafting a script in my mind that combined strength with clarity. I wanted him to see the gravity of his actions, not just the betrayal, but how he shattered my trust, our family, and the lives of our children. I was determined to break down his defenses and make him own his actions, while also preparing for his inevitable attempts to manipulate the situation. I would stand my ground, speaking my truth with unwavering confidence. 5. Social media blitz. I began crafting additional posts to go live in the days leading up to the weekend. I wanted to create an avalanche of awareness about the affair. I wrote about the realities of infidelity, how it feels to be deceived, and the emotional toll it takes on families. I included hashtags like #CheatersExposed, #infidelity, and #truthmatters in the hopes of reaching a wider audience. I encouraged my friends to share their own experiences with betrayal, creating a community of support around my situation. I wanted people to rally behind me, to remind me that I wasn't alone in this fight. 6. Gather evidence of his lies. While I continued my digital search for revenge, I began to gather evidence of his lies. I strategically arranged for my friends to catch Ryan in the act of deceit. I instructed Chloe to invite him to a gathering under the guise of wanting to have a family-friendly weekend with the kids. It was a perfect cover, and I knew it would create the opportunity I needed for the confrontation. As the weekend approached, my heart danced a chaotic rhythm between anxiety and exhilaration. I felt like a beast poised on the edge of a cliff, ready to leap into the fray. I went through every message, every photo, honing in on the perfect chaos I was about to unleash. The countdown was real now. Just 2 days left until I would turn my pain into a weapon of justice. The day finally arrived. I woke up with butterflies in my stomach, the thrill of impending revenge coursing through my veins. I donned a simple, yet striking outfit that made me feel confident, my favorite dress that hugged my curves just right, my makeup on point, ready to reveal to the world the fierce woman I had become. This day was about more than just revenge, it was about reclaiming my identity, my voice, and my power. I dropped the kids off with my parents, knowing they would be safe while I played the role of the unassuming wife. The moment I stepped into Chloe's house where the gathering would take place, I felt an electric charge in the air. Friends had begun to arrive, and I noticed many of them giving me sympathetic smiles, their eyes filled with unspoken understanding. They had seen the hurt, the pain I had been carrying for far too long. I could feel their support surrounding me, a protective shield against the storm that was about to erupt. Ryan arrived later, blissfully unaware of the trap that lay in wait for him. He greeted everyone with a casual smile, completely oblivious to the tension brewing beneath the surface. I watched him, a mix of anger and sadness swirling inside me. How could he be so careless? Had he truly thought he could continue living a double life with no consequences? I was ready to shatter that illusion. As the evening progressed, laughter and chatter filled the air. The children played in the background, normalcy contrasting sharply with the storm about to unfold. I caught Ryan stealing glances at his phone, a nervous habit I had come to recognize, and it filled me with a sense of satisfaction. He was on edge, and for the first time, it was because of his own choices. Then, at the perfect moment, I decided it was time. "Hey everyone!" I called out, my voice steady as I stood, commanding attention. The room quieted. Eyes shifted to me, curiosity piqued. "I know this is a lovely gathering, but I have something important I'd like to share." Chloe exchanged a glance with me, a silent reassurance. I could see the anticipation in her eyes, knowing full well the gravity of what was about to unfold. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of 1,000 emotions crash over me. It was now or never. "Ryan," I said, my gaze fixed on him, unwavering. "We need to talk. And I think everyone deserves to hear this." I paused for dramatic effect, letting the tension simmer in the air. I could see the color drain from his face. The room grew silent, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. "Do you remember last week?" I continued, my voice rising as I recounted the tale of betrayal. "When I found the texts on your phone? Or did you think you could?" The air in the room grew heavy as the weight of my words sank in. I could feel the collective breath of my friends held in anticipation, and the shock on Ryan's face was priceless. It was a mixture of fear and disbelief, as if he were a deer caught in headlights. I relished the moment, the sweet taste of justice mingling with the bitterness of betrayal. "What are you talking about, Emma?" he stammered, trying to regain his composure, his voice trembling ever so slightly. "This isn't the place for this. We can talk about it later." But there was no later, not anymore. "No," I said firmly, cutting him off. "The time for secrets is over. Lisa, the woman you so brazenly decided to betray our family with, she's not just some fling. We all deserve to know the truth about who you really are." I could feel the room shift, the tension morphing into a palpable energy. Gasps echoed from the gathered friends, some exchanging horrified glances as the truth unraveled like a poorly stitched seam. "This is just a misunderstanding," Ryan protested weakly, but I could see him faltering, the facade crumbling. "You think this is a misunderstanding?" I retorted, my voice rising in volume, filled with a fierce determination that surprised even me. "I have screenshots, messages, and proof of everything. You've been lying to me, to our friends, to our children. You've destroyed everything we built together, and for what? A thrill? A moment of distraction?" The faces around us varied in expressions, some looked sympathetic, while others held anger towards Ryan. I found solace in knowing that I wasn't alone in this fight. My friends were rallying behind me, and I could almost hear their unspoken support. Ryan's expression shifted from confidence to sheer panic as he realized that the crowd was no longer on his side. "Emma. Please," he pleaded, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Let's talk about this privately." But I was done talking privately. I wanted the world to see him for who he truly was. I turned and addressed the room, letting the words pour out of me with a cathartic release. "For those of you who don't know, Ryan has been having an affair. He's been lying to me while pretending to be the devoted husband." I pointed at him with conviction, letting my anger fuel my voice. "And this is not just my battle. It's a shared experience for anyone who's ever been deceived." I could see Lisa's name hanging in the air, a specter that haunted this moment, and it felt liberating to finally say it openly. "It's not just the act of cheating that hurts, it's the breach of trust, the loss of what you thought was real. I won't remain silent about it any longer." As I spoke, I watched the reactions from my friends. Some were nodding in agreement, others were whispering in disbelief. I saw Chloe's eyes shine with pride. She knew the weight of my struggle and had stood by me through the darkest moments. The support I felt from them was like a warm embrace, igniting a fire in my heart. Finally, I turned back to Ryan, whose expression had shifted from denial to despair. "I hope you know that this is just the beginning. I'll be sharing this story with everyone, and I won't let you manipulate the narrative." At that moment, as I held Ryan's gaze, I felt liberated. It was as if I had uncovered a new part of myself. It was one of those rainy Tuesday afternoons where the world feels heavy with secrets, each drop of water an echo of the lies I had been drowning in for months. I sat cross-legged on my bed, the familiar scent of my lavender-scented candles mingling with the cold, metallic smell of the city outside. As I stared at my phone, the screen lit up with another message from him, all sweet emojis and claims of devotion. My heart twisted into knots. His name was Jake, a name that once made my heart flutter but now made my stomach turn. We had been together for 2 years, each moment shared a tapestry woven with laughter, stolen kisses, and whispered dreams. But it was in those quiet moments, when the laughter faded and the silence settled in, that I began to sense something was amiss. I had seen the way he looked at his phone, his face lighting up with a smile that wasn't meant for me, how he'd pull away just enough to keep me guessing. My gut told me what my heart refused to acknowledge: Jake was cheating. My best friend, Sarah, had been the first to plant that seed of doubt in my mind, her voice laced with concern as she recounted her own experiences of betrayal. Trust your instincts, don't ignore the signs, she implored. Her words echoed in my mind like a haunting melody, growing louder as days turned into weeks. I had wanted to confront him, to demand answers, but fear held me captive like a prisoner in my own heart. What if I was wrong? The thought of losing him terrified me beyond belief. And so, I chose a different path, one lined with cunning and strategy. If he wanted to play a game of deception, I would become the master player. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins as I hatched my plan, a sickening mix of dread and determination swelling inside me like a storm ready to burst. I set out to create a series of fake dates, carefully staged encounters that would unravel the threads of his lies, revealing the truth hidden beneath his charming facade. In those moments of plotting, the world around me blurred, the raindrops outside mirroring the tumult within. I had become a puppet master, fingers poised over strings of deceit, ready to pull them taut. My heart raced at the thought of each carefully orchestrated scenario, the impending satisfaction of seeing his world turn upside down. No longer would I be the one left in the shadows, waiting for scraps of affection. I was ready to expose his betrayal, no matter the cost. But as I prepared to take those first steps into my dark plan, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that revenge carries its own price, one I wasn't sure I was ready to pay. The days leading up to that fateful moment were torturous, each one dragging on like a slow, suffocating embrace. I had set the stage for Jake's downfall, but with every tick of the clock, a part of me faltered. Doubt crept in like an unwelcome intruder, gnawing at my resolve. Was I really ready for this? Yet there was a moment, a single interaction, that cemented my decision. It was a Saturday evening when he'd invited me to his place, his voice wrapping around me like a warm blanket. We had spent most of the day laughing, our playful banter flowing easily, but lurking beneath the surface was an unease I couldn't shake off. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across his living room, I caught a glimpse of his phone, sitting innocently on the coffee table, screen lit up. It was a notification, a message from someone named Lily. Just as my heart sank into my stomach, he casually reached for it, his fingers brushing against the screen in a way that felt too protective, too secretive. My pulse quickened, and I felt a sudden rush of nausea. "Who's Lily?" I asked, my voice trembling as I tried to maintain a facade of nonchalance. He laughed, a light, airy sound that felt like cold water splashed in my face. "Just a friend from work. You know how it is, right?" He said it so casually, as if his words were meant to soothe, but it only turned my stomach further. "You're the only one I care about." Those words hung in the air like a cruel joke. My heart screamed for clarity, but my mind wrestled with disbelief. Who was Lily? Why did he need to shield this friend from me? My thoughts collided in a whirlwind of confusion, each one fueled by a cocktail of betrayal and heartache. Waking up the next morning, I felt like a stranger in my own skin. The light that usually warmed our shared moments had darkened, casting a pall over my thoughts. I spiraled down an emotional abyss, replaying his laughter, his touch, the way he'd looked at me. It all felt like a carefully crafted facade, and my heart, so eager to believe in love, was now battling overwhelming anger. I turned to Sarah, my confidant, my rock amidst the storm. Over lattes at our favorite cafe, I poured out my pain, my fears, and the unsettling dread that gnawed at me. "I just want the truth, Sarah. I can't keep living like this, wondering if I'm just a backup plan." Her eyes softened with empathy, but I noticed the flicker of something else, encouragement. "You deserve to know, and if he's lying, you need to show him the consequences. You have to be bold enough to uncover the truth." Those words ignited a spark within me, an awakening of sorts. It was a call to arms, a reminder that I was not powerless. I could take control of this situation, flipping the script in a way he never saw coming. The thought of deception became less about revenge and more about liberation, a release from the chains of uncertainty that had bound me for so long. It was that same night that I mapped out my first encounter, a blind date set up with a perfect girl I'd found on social media, someone who looked just enough like me to stir confusion and suspicion. I crafted the message so carefully, making sure it would pop up at the right moment. I imagined him sitting at a bar, glancing at his phone with casual excitement, only to be hit with the shocking realization that I was no longer the only one in his orbit. I wanted him to feel the uncertainty I had endured for so long, the gnawing anxiety of wondering if your partner's affection was genuine or merely a performance. But the energy I had poured into my plan quickly spiraled into something darker. As I executed my first setup, I watched from a distance, my heart racing and mind swirling with anticipation. I had arranged for Jake to be at that bar with his friends when the date was supposed to happen. I imagined seeing his face when he received the message, the moment his carefree laughter would falter into disbelief. But instead of satisfaction, I was gripped by an icy dread. What if he truly loved me? What if this pushed him away permanently? The evening came, the bar buzzing with laughter and chatter, and I stood in the shadows, heart pounding as I watched him. The seconds felt like hours as I witnessed his friends egg him on to check his phone. He laughed boisterously, not knowing that the joke was about to be on him. The moment arrived, he pulled out his phone, and I held my breath, anticipation tearing through me. When he read the message, an innocuous but suggestive text meant to spark his curiosity, I saw the flicker of confusion, then the unmistakable spark of intrigue in his eyes. I was shaking with adrenaline, but a tide of guilt washed over me. I was doing this to expose his lies. Why did it feel like I was cracking open my own heart instead? Suddenly, the joy in my scheme turned bitter. Instead of confronting him with the truth, I was reduced to a mere spectator, watching as he responded with excitement. He typed back, and I could see the way his face lit up with flirtation. My heart sank again, this time deeper than before. The laughter of his friends bounced around me, but I felt utterly isolated, a ghost among the living, trapped in my own twisted game. Over the next couple of weeks, each fake date led to an avalanche of emotions. I carefully orchestrated several setups, each one designed to push Jake closer to the brink of discovery. But with every encounter I facilitated, the weight of my guilt became heavier. I felt like a puppet master entrapped by my own strings, the joy of revenge quickly morphing into an addiction I couldn't control. Then, everything imploded one evening when I received a message from Sarah. It was late, and the ominous tone of her text sent shivers down my spine. "We need to talk. It's about Jake." My heart raced, and I felt the familiar sense of dread return. It appeared he didn't just keep secrets from me, he had secrets from everyone. Sarah had seen him, the real Jake, out with someone else, someone who wasn't part of my cruel game. I confronted her immediately, her words crashing over me like waves. "He was with that girl, Lily," she exclaimed, her eyes wide with disbelief. I thought I was imagining things, but I saw them together at the new Italian place. They looked close. It felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. The very foundation of my revenge was now a foundation of lies. I had become so lost in orchestrating his downfall that I had overlooked the truth, the very thing I sought to uncover. I had unwittingly turned into a mirror of the deceit I loathed. The next day was a blur of heartache and anger. How could I have thought this would make me feel better? I could barely breathe as I sat in my car, parked just a few blocks away from Jake's apartment, the weight of my phone crushing against my palm. The shrill ring of Sarah's voice replayed in my head, amplifying the chaos inside me as I tried to comprehend what she had just shared. "He was with that girl, Lily," echoed like a warning bell, and in that moment, everything shifted. The carefully woven web of my revenge, once feeling like justice, now tangled into a choking net around my own heart. I stared blankly at the screen, the glow illuminating the contours of my face, which felt increasingly like a stranger. I had believed I was in control, but now I realized I had become a participant in an emotional game I never wanted to play. I had set up my fake dates as a preemptive strike against betrayal, yet in doing so, I'd only mirrored Jake's own deceit. My mind raced back to the countless hours spent crafting messages, picking names, and conjuring fake personas. I had taken pleasure in imagining his face when he realized what was happening, but now all I could picture was the hurt I was inflicting. What would a part of me become if I went through with this? With bated breath, I pulled up my messages, scrolling through the fake conversations I had orchestrated, the excitement of each date now tinged with an unsettling bitterness. As I contemplated deleting the whole charade, my heart thundered in my chest, a symphony of doubt and fear playing in perfect discord. What would happen if I pulled back now? Would he slide further into the arms of that Lily, creating an even deeper rift between us? Then it hit me like a punch to the gut. I was losing sight of the real betrayal, the truth. I had wanted to expose him, to drag his lies into the light, but I had become ensnared in my own duplicity. I was no better than the man I was trying to dethrone. I had made myself a villain in my own story, and it was suffocating. My hands trembled as I gripped the steering wheel. In that moment of clarity that cut through the fog of anger and betrayal, I realized I needed to confront him, not with a trap or a scheme, but with honesty. I pictured his face, the easy grin that had once brightened my world, and the laughter that felt so distant now. I missed him, the real him, and the idea that I was willing to destroy that made my stomach churn. But before I could convince myself of this new path, I glanced down and saw a notification on my phone, a message from Jake. My breath hitched. Did he know? Was this the moment everything would unravel? I swiped to open the message, my heart racing, only to find it was a simple, innocuous text. Hey babe, can we talk later? I need to clear some things up. The words sat heavily in the air, and suddenly, I was gripped by a chilling sense of urgency, a fear that perhaps he was about to confess something that would shatter my already fragile heart. I bit my lip hard enough to taste blood, the sweet irony of that familiar pain racing through me. Was this the moment I had been waiting for, or was it the prelude to a deeper betrayal? That suffocating feeling returned as I processed everything. I had orchestrated layers of deception, but I realized I was the one trapped. My fingers hovered over my phone, torn between fear and resolve. Did I want to continue? As I sat in my car, the chaos of conflicting emotions swirling in my mind, I resolved to move forward. I had initially set out to expose Jake's betrayals, but now I felt a new clarity forming around my original intentions. I was done being the one bewildered by uncertainty. I would execute my revenge, not to destroy him, but to reclaim my own sense of agency and clarity. With determination hardened by the fear of losing myself in my own deceptions, I sketched out a clever plan to stage one final fake date that would lay bare Jake's true character, while simultaneously showing him the consequences of his actions. This time, I would not just sit back and observe, I would be the architect of my own empowerment. Step 1. Develop the setup. I had already established a few dates that I had set up, each one designed to elicit a reaction from Jake, but this would be the grand finale. I decided to recruit an accomplice, someone who could play the part of the supposed new girlfriend convincingly. That's when I thought of Mia, a mutual friend who had a flair for drama and an understanding of my situation. I reached out to her, explaining everything in detail, and to my relief, she was eager to help. Step 2. Craft the illusion. Mia and I brainstormed a backstory. She would create a social media profile, a cute, outgoing girl named Sophie who just moved to the city and was looking for someone to show her around. Together, we crafted a series of flirty messages, peppered with laughter and shared interests, that would lead Jake to believe that he had stumbled into something exciting and new. I even had Mia send Jake a picture of herself in a cute cafe, casually mentioning how much she liked the same coffee he loved. The more familiar she seemed, the more real it would feel to him. Step 3. Set the date. We agreed on a public place for the encounter. A trendy bar downtown, where Jake and his friends often hung out. I wanted him to see for himself what it felt like to be on the other side of the equation. Mia sent Jake a message inviting him out for drinks, and to my quiet satisfaction, his excitement was palpable. It was as if I could feel his eagerness through the screen. Step 4. The reveal. On the night of the setup, Jake strolled into the bar with his usual bravado, dressed in his casual best, and I quietly positioned myself at a table across the room. My heart raced, not with revenge but with anxiety. What if he didn't take the bait? What if he just brushed it off? My palms were sweaty as I watched him scan the room for this Sophie character, clearly intrigued by the mystery. Mia arrived shortly thereafter, the perfect picture of brightness and charm. She smiled at Jake, and I could see the initial spark of attraction flicker in his eyes. They exchanged pleasantries and began to chat, and with each minute that passed, I felt a mixture of satisfaction and dread. This was the moment he would realize the weight of his actions. Step 5. The confrontation. As the evening wore on, I had orchestrated an unexpected twist. I had confided in another friend, Tom, about my plan, and he agreed to drop by the bar to casually check in on me. He was the perfect wrench in the gears of Jake's deception. As Tom entered and waved at me, I caught Jake's eye, and the realization hit him like a freight climax. Jake's laughter echoed in the dimly lit bar, a sound that once filled me with warmth. Now, it clawed at my insides, grating against the reality I could no longer ignore. I shifted in my seat, my heart pounding as I watched him lean in closer to Mia, his eyes sparkling with mischief. They were building a connection, and with every shared joke, I felt the walls I had erected around my heart begin to crumble. But I had a plan. I inhaled deeply, grounding myself as I leaned into the moment. This was the climax of my revenge. I had to see it through. Tom's presence became my anchor. He approached our table, and I could see Jake's gaze shift. The realization dawned. He knew Tom, and as he pieced together our connection, the smile on his face faltered. The air in the bar felt electric, charged with unsaid words and raw emotions. "Hey, I didn't know you were here," Tom said, his tone casual, but his eyes scanning the situation with sharp precision. Mia took the cue and introduced herself, but Jake's expression was a mask of confusion. "Wait, you know her?" He directed the question at Tom, his voice edged with uncertainty. "Yeah, we go way back," Tom replied smoothly, giving me a quick glance as if to say, "Are you ready for this?" Time slowed. I leaned forward, my pulse racing, heart thrumming in my ears like a war drum. I could see the gears turning in Jake's mind, the realization of something slipping out of his grasp. He was on the precipice of understanding. I could feel it. Suddenly, I stood up, my decision igniting my veins with fury and clarity. "Jake, we need to talk." My voice rang out, slicing through the chatter of the bar. Heads turned, and the laughter dimmed to a hush. Jake's jaw tightened as he faced me, surprise morphing into wariness. "What are you doing here?" he asked, a hint of impatience lacing his words. It was a question brimming with pretense, a thin veil over the truth that lingered just beneath the surface. "Is that so?" I shot back, locking my gaze onto his, daring him to look away. The heat of the moment surrounded us as I took a step closer, feeling the weight of every shared memory pressing against my chest. "You don't think I would let you embarrass me without a word, do you?" His expression shifted, a flash of panic crossing his features as he glanced at Mia. The tension was suffocating, a thick fog of realization that hung heavy between us. Every secret, every lie we crafted, now spiraled into the air like a plume of smoke, dissipating slowly but surely. "Wait, what do you mean?" he stammered, his bravado faltering as confusion danced in his eyes. I couldn't hold back the bitterness that seeped into my tone. "You thought you could have it all, didn't you? While I was sitting at home, wondering if you were actually mine? This is your chance to come clean, Jake. Because if you think you can just waltz away from this with a pretty smile while I'm left in the dark, you're mistaken." Mia caught on, and without skipping a beat, she added, "You're right, Jake. We were just talking about how little we know about you." Her voice dripped with false innocence, a light-hearted jab that cut deeper than any knife. Jake's expression shifted from confusion to panic, his eyes darting back and forth between Mia and me as if we were two predators ready to pounce. Denial flickered across his features like a candle caught in a gust of wind. "This is ridiculous," he said, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. "Ridiculous? You're the one who's been playing games." I felt a surge of power in speaking my truth, exposure transforming the weight of my anguish into something more bearable. "You've been caught between your lies and my reality. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Or did you think I wouldn't care?" The atmosphere in the bar had thickened, whispers floated around us like a fog, all eyes riveted to our confrontation. Time seemed suspended in that moment, and a sensory overload washed over me, the faint clinking of glasses, the vibrant laughter of strangers, and the palpable tension that hung between us like a storm cloud waiting to burst. I stood firm, my heartbeat steadying as I glared at him, determined not to let his bravado rattle me. "You've made your choice, Jake. While you enjoyed flirting with your little friends, I was building a life we could have shared. Did you think I wouldn't find the truth? Or that I wouldn't take matters into my own hands?" His facade cracked, and I could see the real Jake, the frightened boy who didn't know how to face the consequences of his actions. I had expected anger, but all I saw was a mask slipping away, revealing a vulnerability he had hid beneath layers of charm and deception. I didn't mean for it to get this far," he stammered, his bravado fading like a whisper. "And what exactly did you mean?" I pressed. "Was it just another game too? You? Another opportunity to play both sides?" My voice was sharp, each word slicing through the remnants of the love I thought we shared. "I set up those dates to expose you, but I ended up exposing myself to the truth about who you really are." He opened his mouth to respond, but the silence between us felt heavy, laced with the aching realization that whatever shred of sincerity he may have had was crumbling. "I didn't want to hurt you," he finally replied, the desperation creeping back into his voice. "Too late for that," I shot back, the passion igniting a fire within me as the room began to buzz with the resonating energy of the revelation. I could sense the weight of other people's attention, their curiosity heightened by the unfolding drama. The emotional stakes had risen, and I felt strangely liberated, like a bird breaking free from its cage. With a final, piercing gaze, I turned away from him, my heart racing as I walked away. I didn't need to hear any more excuses or half-hearted apologies. The truth was laid bare, and I had done what I set out to do. There would be no reversal of roles this time. I was reclaiming my dignity. As I stepped outside the bar, the cool night air hit me like a bomb, washing away the remnants of my turmoil. I savored the sensation of the rain slowly beginning to fall, each drop mingling with my tears, creating a cathartic release. Beneath the stormy sky, I found clarity in the chaos. I had chosen to confront my own vulnerability, and in doing so, I had reclaimed my power. In the days that followed, Jake's reactions were a cocktail of fragmented apologies and attempts to reconcile, but there was no going back. I remained steadfast in my decision. "Hey there, I'm Ruth. If you're watching this, I guess you're interested in revenge, perhaps you're on the brink of it yourself. But let me take you back to the moment that changed everything for me." Picture this, a small suburban town, the kind of place where secrets are buried behind white picket fences and friendly smiles. The sun was shining on a crisp autumn afternoon, and the leaves were a cascade of red and gold, but all I could see was the darkness creeping into my life. I was a junior in high school, just a regular girl trying to navigate the murky waters of adolescence. I had dreams of going to art school, sitting at my easel, and painting masterpieces that would make my mother proud. My mom is my rock, a single parent who always encouraged me to chase my dreams. She worked 2 jobs to give me everything, and I admired her resilience. But life was about to throw us a curveball that neither of us saw coming. Then there was Mia, my best friend since childhood. We shared everything, secrets, laughter, and even our fears. We were inseparable until one afternoon in late October, when the leaves crunched beneath our feet and the air was fragrant with the promise of Halloween. That day, something shifted. I watched as Mia crossed paths with Jason Collins, a guy from our school with a smile that could charm the world. He was handsome, popular, and had a reputation for being a heartbreaker. I always thought he was out of reach for someone like me. But what I didn't realize was that Mia had her sights set on him, and soon enough, she was swept away into a whirlwind romance I never saw coming. I wanted to be supportive, after all, who wouldn't want to see their best friend happy? But as the weeks passed, I could feel the distance between us growing. Phone calls turned into texts, and texts turned into silence. I was losing my best friend, and it hurt more than I could bear. On a frigid November evening, at a party I was too shy to attend, everything fell apart. When I finally gathered the courage to show up, I walked into a scene that would haunt me forever. There she was, Mia, tangled in Jason's arms, laughing like I had forgotten how to. I felt my heart shatter in that moment, as if the air was sucked from the room. It was a betrayal that cut deeper than I could have imagined. I confronted her that night, and in a moment of anger and disbelief, I saw the real Mia, the girl who cared more about popularity than friendship. She shrugged off my hurt as if it were nothing, her eyes gleaming with a satisfaction that twisted the knife deeper. "You were just holding me back, Ruth," she said, as if those words could justify the devastation she had caused. That's when the spark of revenge ignited in my chest, a burning desire for justice. It wasn't just about the betrayal anymore, it was about reclaiming my power. I started plotting a way to show Mia that I wouldn't be the footnote in her story. So here I am, on a journey that started with heartbreak but has turned into a quest for vengeance. As I share my story, I hope you'll see pieces of your own struggles and maybe even find inspiration in what I learned along the way. After all, revenge isn't always sweet, sometimes it has to be earned. And mine was just getting started. As I stood there in that suffocating living room, surrounded by laughter that felt like daggers, the confusion and disbelief twisted into a gut-wrenching pain. Mia was my sister in spirit, the person I thought I could count on, and she was throwing away our friendship for a fleeting romance with Jason. I had always feared rejection, but this wasn't just rejection, it was betrayal. The laughter echoed in my mind as I replayed the moments of our friendship, sleepovers where we shared dreams, hushed confessions beneath starry skies, and heart-to-heart talks about our futures. I had supported her when she struggled with insecurities, cheered her on through heartbreaks of her own, and now she was leaving me in the dust for someone who barely knew her. The irony stung, as if the universe was laughing along with her, mocking my loyalty. That night, when I confronted her, I didn't just see Mia, I felt the weight of every shared moment collapsing between us, like a building crumbling under the force of a wrecking ball. "You were just holding me back, Ruth," she had said, her voice dripping with indifference. I could scarcely believe what I was hearing. The words clung to me, taunting me in the quiet moments that followed. I found solace in my room, allowing the tears to stream down my cheeks as I clutched the fabric of my stuffed bear, the only relic of my childhood that had survived the storm. How could she not see the value of what we had? How could she throw me aside so easily for a guy who would likely move on to the next shiny object when the thrill wore off? As I scrolled through social media the next day, my heart pounding as I anticipated what I'd see, I found pictures of them together, beaming grins, arms wrapped around each other, Jason's charming smile contrasting so sharply with the betrayal I felt in my own heart. It was like a punch to the gut each time I saw them together, kissing under the autumn leaves, the very leaves we used to jump into as kids. I was an outsider looking in, and the dull ache of loneliness crept in like a thief in the night. But beneath that pain, something dark began to brew. I felt a surge of anger, a fire igniting deep within me. No longer would I allow Mia to dictate my worth or let her bask in the glow of her new life while I melted away in the shadows of my own heartbreak. I had been so focused on the friendship that I had neglected to love myself, and now it was time to change that. My thoughts began to race, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the betrayal was not just an emotional wound, it was a catalyst, pushing me into a new realm of understanding. I started to sketch out my plan late at night, the dim light of my desk lamp illuminating my determination. I would show Mia that this wasn't just a game to me. I would reveal the ugly side of her fairy tale, show her the consequences of her choice to trivialize our bond. What if I exposed her to the very people she was trying to impress? What if I revealed the truth about Jason? After all, he was a notorious player, and if Mia thought she had just bagged a trophy, she had another thing coming. I would dig deep, uncover his past, and unravel the image she held so dearly. Maybe then, she would understand the price of her betrayal, a price that would force her to question her values and feel the weight of her choices. As I plotted my revenge, I felt a strange exhilaration wash over me, fueling the fire burning in my chest. This was no longer just about heartbreak, it was about reclaiming my narrative, reclaiming my life. I wouldn't be the girl left behind while she waltzed off into the sunset. No, I would rise like a phoenix from the ashes of our friendship, and the world would see that I was so much more than just the girl who lost her best friend. With every passing day, the desire for revenge morphed into a resolve that felt palpable. This was my moment. I would make sure Mia understood the true cost of betrayal, and I would reclaim my story. Revenge was on the horizon, and it called to me like a siren song, promising not just justice, but a sense of empowerment I had long forgotten existed. Days turned into weeks, and with each sunrise, the ache in my heart shifted into something darker, something more powerful. My anger transformed into a relentless machine, feeding off every moment of pain, every whispered secret shared between Mia and Jason, and every glance exchanged in the hallways of our high school. With each passing day, the reality of my situation settled deeper within me, and it was clear, I needed to act. At first, I started small. I began by subtly distancing myself from the crowd that once included Mia. I slipped into the background, observing their every move through the lens of my own anger and hurt. I watched as Mia basked in her new popularity, wearing her new relationship like a badge of honor. It gnawed at me, the way she flaunted her happiness, as if our years of friendship were nothing more than a forgotten chapter. One afternoon, while hiding behind the library stacks, I caught sight of Mia and Jason. They were huddled close, their laughter echoing off the walls like an ominous taunt. I could see her face alight with joy, and the rage within me swelled as I realized how far she had gone, all while I suffered in silence. The world around me blurred as I felt the suffocating grip of jealousy tighten its hold. In that moment, I knew I needed more than just petty revenge. I needed to unravel the very fabric of the fairy tale she was living. I wanted to expose the truth beneath the smooth surface of Jason's charm. My heart raced as I remembered the rumors I had heard whispered in the school hallways about him, stories of broken hearts and lies. I had to dig deeper, and I knew just who to ask. I reached out to Jenna, a girl from the cheer team who had once confided in me about Jason's past conquests. Over a lunch that felt charged with unspoken tension, I kept my voice casual as I asked her about him, pretending to be curious rather than vindictive. She obliged, recounting tales of how Jason had played with the hearts of several girls, leaving them shattered in his wake without a second thought. My heart raced with anticipation as I took in every detail, every sordid story. They began to formulate a plan in my mind, a way to strike back at Mia without revealing my hand just yet. I spent hours assembling evidence, screenshots of messages, whispered confessions, and even a few candid photos I'd gathered from social media. Each piece felt like a dagger, a testament to the truth that lay beneath Jason's polished exterior. I could almost feel the weight of it in my hands, and the thrill of revenge electrified my veins. But as my plan started to take shape, the escalation took a darker turn. I began to notice the changes in myself, the way my heart hardened with each passing day. I was consumed, layered in a cold anger that eclipsed my grief. I wasn't just plotting revenge, I was transforming into someone I barely recognized. I would look in the mirror and see the shadows under my eyes and the tightness in my jaw. Where once I had been filled with dreams of artistry, I now saw a girl driven by an insatiable desire for retribution. Then came the moment I had been anxiously waiting for. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low in the sky, I found myself standing outside the gym, the excitement almost palpable. I had orchestrated my chance, and now it was time to unleash my plan. During basketball practice, I sent a message to Mia anonymously, teasing her with the promise of some interesting news about Jason. I could picture her face as she read the message, confusion and curiosity mingling in her expression. A part of me felt a twinge of guilt, but it was quickly drowned out by the thrill of what I had set in motion. I watched as she paced outside the gym, her phone glued to her ear, desperately trying to decipher who had sent the message. My heart raced with every moment of uncertainty, and the satisfaction of knowing I had her on edge was intoxicating. And then, like a cruel twist of fate, everything spiraled. Mia confronted me the following day, her eyes blazing with rage and hurt. "Did you send that message?" she demanded, her voice shaking with emotion. For a fleeting second, guilt lanced through me. I had been so focused on my revenge that I hadn't considered the ramifications. But the answer was clear, I couldn't back down now. "No," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos swirling within. "But you should really find out who it was." I watched as realization dawned on her, the flicker of fear in her eyes igniting my sense of satisfaction. But that satisfaction quickly turned to dread as I began to see the consequences of it. Was the day after Mia confronted me that everything changed. I was sitting in my room, the soft glow of my desk lamp illuminating the pages of my sketchbook, but I barely noticed. I was lost in thought, the adrenaline of the confrontation still coursing through my veins. I could still see the anger and betrayal etched across her face, and it stirred something within me, a mixture of exhilaration and dread. This was no longer just a plan of revenge, it was becoming an obsession. The phone buzzed next to me, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was a group chat with a few remaining friends from my art club. They were talking about a party at Jason's house that weekend, a gathering that would mark the height of his and Mia's new relationship. As I read through their messages, a wave of disgust washed over me. The world was eager to celebrate their love, but all I could think about was how blind they all were to the truth. It felt like a sick joke, and I was the punchline. Suddenly it clicked, the opportunity was right in front of me. I had been so focused on exposing Jason's past to Mia that I had forgotten the bigger picture. This wasn't just about teaching her a lesson, it was about reclaiming my identity. I could turn the attention of our peers onto her, onto the very relationship she held so dear. If I played my cards right, I could make Jason an outcast, and in the process, ruin Mia's precious fairy tale. The thought sent a shiver down my spine, but there was a strange sense of clarity that accompanied it. This was my moment. I could feel the thrill pulsing through me, the darkness that had settled in my heart igniting into a reckless flame of determination. I wasn't just fighting for revenge, I was fighting for my voice, for my story, for the girl I once was, the girl who had stood by Mia through everything only to watch her shatter our friendship for a fleeting romance. That Friday evening, as I prepared for the party, a storm brewed inside me. I chose my outfit carefully, slipping into a fitted black dress that made me feel powerful and fierce. I wanted to represent the part of me that had been buried by Mia's betrayal, the part that was ready to stand tall and reclaim my life. I adorned myself with silver jewelry, a stark contrast to the darkness that had enveloped my heart. When I arrived at Jason's house, I let the chaos of the party wash over me, loud music, laughter, and the heady scent of cheap cologne filling the air. But instead of feeling overwhelmed, I was invigorated. I scanned the room, looking for Mia, and there she was, radiant under the twinkling lights, her laughter ringing out like a siren's call. Jason had his arm wrapped around her shoulder, and she looked blissful, utterly oblivious to the storm that was about to unfold. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that I was not that shy, heartbroken girl anymore. I was the architect of my own destiny, and this night would be my canvas. I made my way towards the snack table, where a few of my classmates were gathered. I had spent the last few days gathering pieces of Jason's past, and now it was time to unleash the storm. I casually brought up the rumors swirling around Jason's reputation, stories of broken hearts, lies, and betrayal. At first, it was just small talk, but as the conversation flowed naturally, I dropped hints of my own experiences with him. You know, I heard he ghosted his last girlfriend the moment he met Mia. Can you believe that? I smirked, watching as the initial surprise morphed into intrigue. The whispers grew louder, and soon enough, I noticed a few more pairs of ears perk up, drawn in by the gravity of the tales I spun. With every word, I could feel the momentum building, a tidal wave of attention shifting away from Mia and onto Jason. The laughter faded as those around me began to absorb the information, their expressions turning from amusement to concern, and it felt like a drug coursing through my veins. When Mia finally caught wind of what was happening, her expression shifted from joy to disbelief. She moved through the crowd, her eyes darting from face to face, trying to figure out what was going wrong. I could see the realization dawning on her, a sense of betrayal creeping into her features as she pieced together the fragments of gossip swirling around her. At that moment, I felt a jolt of satisfaction ripple through me. I was no longer just a background character in her story, I was the author of my own narrative. I could see the seeds of doubt creeping into her heart, and with each passing moment, I reveled in as the party unfolded around me. I clutched my drink tightly, feeling the cool condensation trickle down the glass. My heart raced, not with fear, but with exhilarating anticipation. I had constructed my revenge plan meticulously, and now the pieces were all falling into place. First, I needed to ensure that Jason's reputation was front and center. I had already laid the groundwork with my classmates, and now it was time for the final act. I glanced over at them. Mia was still oblivious to the chaos brewing around her, her laughter echoing in my ears like a haunting reminder of what I had lost. I would ensure that she caught the tide of gossip building against Jason, and before the night was over, she would be questioning everything. The first step was simple, I would plant the seed of doubt in Mia's mind. I casually strolled over to where she was laughing with some of her friends, the confident facade I had built wrapping around me like armor. As I approached, I made sure to catch her eye, smiling just enough to feign friendliness. "Hey, Mia. Can we talk for a second?" I asked, my voice light but firm. She looked surprised but nodded, her eyes darting to Jason, who was obliviously immersed in conversation with some of his teammates. We stepped a little away from the crowd, and I could see the curiosity etched on her face. "What's up?" she asked, a hint of tension underlying her cheerful tone. "Have you heard the rumors about Jason?" I asked, feigning innocence. "I mean, it seems like everyone is talking about him tonight." Her expression shifted slightly, confusion mingling with the flicker of anxiety. "What do you mean?" she asked, tilting her head. "Oh, nothing too serious," I said, letting the tension build. "Just some things I've heard about how he treated his last girlfriend. You know, things that might make you think twice." I could see her heart start to race, the smile fading as doubt crept into her mind. "What do you mean? What did he do?" she pressed, her voice almost a whisper now. I leaned in closer, lowering my voice conspiratorially. "I heard he ghosted her right after they got together, left her completely crushed. It's weird, right? You think he'd be different with you, but..." I let the sentence hang in the air, watching as her expression shifted from confusion to shock. Mia's eyes widened, and a panic began to pour across her face. "Ruth, are you serious?" she demanded, desperation bleeding into her tone. "Just something to keep in mind, Mia. You deserve someone who values you, you know?" I said, trying to sound like the caring friend I once was. But underneath it all, there was a thrill coursing through me. I was planting seeds of doubt, and they were taking root with every word. Next, I needed to enlist a few key people to help amplify the gossip. I made my way back to the snack table, where Jenna was chatting with a couple of other girls from the cheer team. I had gotten close to Jenna over the past week, and I knew she had a big mouth. "Hey, did you hear what Mia just found out about Jason?" I asked casually, leaning against the table. "What?" Jenna asked, intrigued. I smiled, letting the rumor slip from my lips like a delicious secret. "I just told her about how he treated his last girlfriend, and I'm pretty sure it's not the first time he's done it. It's going around, you know?" Jenna's eyes sparkled, and the other girls leaned in, eager to hear more. I could see the wheels turning in their heads, the hunger for drama igniting in their eyes. "I heard he's been playing girls left and right," one of them chimed in, and soon the conversation spiraled, with each girl adding her own tidbit, twisting the narrative to further tarnish Jason's image. As the whispers spread through the party, I watched the energy shift. The laughter and merriment faded, replaced by a growing tension. I could feel the anticipation building inside me, a deliciously vindictive thrill. Mia was in the center of it all, oblivious to the storm swirling around her. Then came the moment I had been waiting for, the chance to put everything into motion. I spotted Jason across the room, laughing with a group of jocks, completely unaware of what was happening around him. I approached him, wearing a practiced smile as I leaned in. "Hey, Jason. Can I grab you for a sec?" I asked, my tone friendly but purposeful. He raised an eyebrow but followed me away from the group. "What's up?" I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me as I led Jason away from the crowd, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. This was it, the moment I had carefully orchestrated, the tipping point where everything I had planned would collide. He looked at me with that charming, disarming smile, completely unaware of the storm brewing just beneath the surface. "What's going on, Ruth?" he asked, his tone light, but I could sense an undercurrent of curiosity. I had rehearsed what I would say, but as I stood there, the gravity of the situation settled over me like a thick fog. I took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of confidence I could muster. "I think you need to know what's being said about you tonight," I started, keeping my voice steady. "There are rumors spreading about how you treated your last girlfriend, and honestly, it's not looking good." His smile faltered, replaced by a flash of irritation. "What the hell are you talking about?" he retorted, his posture stiffening. "That's ridiculous." "Oh, it's definitely not ridiculous," I continued, my voice low and deliberate. "People are saying you ghosted her and moved on to Mia without a second thought. It's making waves, Jason. Do you really want that kind of reputation?" I could see the realization wash over him, his expression shifting from dismissal to concern. The room around us faded into a blur, the laughter and music muted as I watched the gears turn in his mind. He opened his mouth, likely to protest, but the words caught in his throat as he caught sight of Mia, who was standing just a few feet away, her face pale as she overheard our conversation. Mia's eyes widened in shock, and I could feel the tension hanging between us, thick like a taut wire ready to snap. I could see the panic settling in her, a realization dawning that whatever fairy tale she had imagined with Jason was now crumbling like fragile glass. The crowd was slowly gathering, drawn by the tension in the air. Whispers began to ripple through the party, curiosity mingling with concern, a palpable energy that electrified the atmosphere. I could feel the eyes of onlookers boring into me, their attention shifting like a tide towards the unfolding drama. I had designed this moment to make waves, and the currents were crashing against the shore. "Ruth, this isn't funny," Jason said, a hint of desperation creeping into his voice. "You're trying to stir something up that isn't there. What's wrong with you?" The defiance in his tone ignited a fire within me. "I'm just trying to make sure Mia knows the truth." I shot back, my emotions spilling over. "You think you can play with people's hearts and not face the consequences? You're wrong. You need to own up to your actions." Mia stepped forward, her voice trembling as she cut in, "What did you say?" I could see the hurt and confusion written across her face, a painful contradiction to the joy she had radiated earlier that evening. "Just telling Jason about how people are talking," I said with a sweet smile, letting the satisfaction sink in. "You were just so happy, but maybe it's time you knew the truth about him." Jason's expression twisted into a mask of anger and annoyance. "This is ridiculous," he spat, but the way his gaze flickered back to me told me my words were sinking in. "I didn't ghost anyone. That's not how it happened." "Then what is the truth?" I challenged, my adrenaline surging. The crowd had grown, everyone leaning in, and I felt a surge of power with all eyes on us. "You can't just dismiss the hurt you've caused. You think it's a game?" Mia's face was a whirlwind of emotions, betrayal, anger, confusion, and the flicker of realization that perhaps this relationship wasn't as perfect as she wanted it to be. The moment was becoming unbearable, and I could see the internal battle raging within her. "You really think I'm like that?" Jason sneered, but the bravado was fading. "I care about you, Mia. I thought you knew that. Then why are people saying these things?" She shot back, her voice trembling with disbelief. "Why is everyone talking about it?" A murmur rippled through the crowd, fueled by the growing tension. Jason opened his mouth, likely to defend himself again, but I wasn't about to let him twist the narrative back in his favor. I leaned in closer, my voice steady, "Because it's the truth, Jason. You can't hide behind your charm and good looks forever." Mia's eyes were darting between the aftermath unfolded like a slow-motion movie, every moment stretching out as the tension coagulated in the air. The party that had been filled with laughter and light turned into something starkly different, a crucible of confrontation. As the crowd closed in, their faces alight with curiosity and a hint of concern, I felt an electric charge in the atmosphere, a tangible sense of reckoning. Jason's bravado crumbled. He glanced at Mia, his confident facade cracking under the pressure of her gaze, which was filled with betrayal and anger. "Mia, just listen." "It's not," he began, but the words fell flat. The truth I had exposed had ignited a wildfire that he could no longer control. Mia, however, seemed to be caught in a storm of disbelief. She turned toward me, her expression shifting into one of grave realization. "Ruth, is this true? Did he really ghost someone?" she asked, her voice trembling, the vulnerability seeping through her bravado. The room echoed with whispers, people leaning in and exchanging knowing glances. I could see the pieces falling into place, the spell of infatuation dissipating like mist under the sun. "Mia," I said gently, "you deserve to know what's happening behind closed doors. You deserve to be with someone who values you." With every passing second, the laughter ebbed into an uncomfortable silence, all eyes glued to the unraveling drama before them. I felt the adrenaline still pulsing through my veins, a potent mix of revenge and vindication. But then, something shifted, a pang of guilt snaked through the thrill of victory, squeezing my heart tight. Mia's expression twisted as realization flooded her face. I can't believe you, she stammered, the earlier warmth in her demeanor evaporating into the cold night air. You're supposed to be my friend, Ruth. You're supposed to support me, not tear me down. Her words struck like a slap. I had become the very thing I despised, a source of pain, just like she had been to me. But the anger in me fought back. You think this is about you? You disregarded our friendship for the sake of a fleeting romance. You humiliated me, I shouted, the rawness of my hurt spilling out in every syllable. I never meant to hurt you, she cried, her voice catching in her throat. I just wanted to be happy. And at what cost? I countered, the bitterness clawing at my throat. The crowd was hanging on every word, the tension palpable. I realized then that I had not only sought revenge against Jason but against Mia too, and it was beginning to feel hollow. As the confrontation escalated, Jason attempted to salvage his image, throwing his arm around Mia in a desperate show of affection, but it only backfired. Come on, babe, don't listen to her. He pleaded. You know how people exaggerate. But the trust that had once characterized Mia's eyes was replaced by a haunting uncertainty. I need to think, she finally whispered, stepping away from him, the weight of the moment crashing down on both of us like a tidal wave. The crowd began to murmur again, the gravity of the revelation settling in. In that moment, I had won my battle, but at what cost? I watched as Mia walked away, her head held high but her shoulders trembling. The realization that I had pushed her away, that I had become the villain in this twisted tale of betrayal, hit me hard. The exhilaration of revenge faded into a bitter taste of regret. As the party began to dwindle, the laughter and music replaced by hushed conversations and uncertain glances, I felt a hollowness within me, one that no amount of vindication could fill. I was left standing there, surrounded by the remnants of what had been, and the fragmentation of my friendship with Mia was carved into my heart, a scar I would carry forever. Days turned into weeks, and the fallout from that party echoed throughout our school. Mia had distanced herself not just from Jason but from the circles we once shared. I saw her in the hallways, a specter of the girl she used to be, lost, confused, and alone. The whispers had turned into a cacophony of speculation, painting her in shades of blame and sorrow. I tried reaching out, sending texts to check on her, but each message went unanswered. The silence cut deeper than any betrayal. I had fought so hard to reclaim my voice, to exact my revenge, but in doing so, I had lost my friend. I spent nights tossing and turning, haunted by the specter of what could have been. I painted frantically, filling my canvases with swirling colors that mirrored the
Hey everyone, my name is Joanna, and I'm here to share a story that has haunted me for years, a tale of betrayal, heartbreak, and, yes, revenge. Picture this, a small town in the heart of the Midwest, where the air is thick with humidity during summer, and the streets are lined with the golden glow of street lamp light during the long, lonely nights. It's a place where everyone knows each other, where secrets can feel like a heavy stone in your gut. And trust me, the secret I carried would weigh me down for a long time. Growing up, my world revolved around two key people, my best friend, Sarah, and a boy named Mark, who had a smile that could light up even the gloomiest of days. Sarah and I were inseparable, two peas in a pod, the kind of friendship you think will last forever. We dreamed about the future, talked about college, and shared all our secrets under a blanket of stars. I never imagined that our lives would take such a dark turn, that a single betrayal would unravel everything we held dear. Mark was the boy next door, the charming, athletic type who could easily steal any girl's heart. He had a way of making everyone feel special, and I was no exception. The crush I had on him was innocent at first, wrapped in the protective bubble of friendship. But as we grew older, that crush deepened into something more. I felt like I was walking on air whenever he was around. The laughter, the whispers, the stolen glances, it was everything I had ever wanted. I never thought he'd turn out to be the catalyst for my darkest moments. Then came the fateful night, the night that would change everything. It was a summer evening, warm and intoxicating, perfumed with the scent of blooming jasmine. I remember wearing my favorite sundress, feeling beautiful and carefree. I had no idea that behind my back, Sarah was plotting something that would shatter my heart and ignite a fire within me that I couldn't control. As I sat on my porch, watching the sun slip below the horizon, I felt a sudden chill. It was as if the universe was warning me, whispering that my world would soon crumble. Little did I know that betrayal was lurking just beyond the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The events of that night would serve as the ignition for my quest for revenge, a journey I never wanted to embark on but felt I had no choice but to take. So, buckle up, because this isn't just a tale of retaliation, it's a journey through heartbreak and the lengths one can go to reclaim their dignity. What I did, and what I became, is something I still grapple with to this day. But one thing is for sure, the price of betrayal is steep, and I was more than willing to pay it. The darkness crept in quickly that night, a shroud that wrapped itself around my heart and mind as I waited for Mark to arrive. He promised he would come over after his soccer practice, and the anticipation danced in my chest. I imagined our conversations, the laughter we would share, and perhaps even the electric moment when I would finally tell him how I felt. But as I was lost in daydreams, Sarah showed up unexpectedly, her eyes gleaming with a mischievous light I hadn't seen in a while. "Hey Joe, have you heard the news?" she asked, her voice too high-pitched, too excited for my liking. I could sense something was off, but before I could question her, she pulled out her phone, a devilish grin spreading across her face. "Look," she said, thrusting the device into my hands. My heart dropped as I read the messages exchanged between Sarah and Mark. They weren't just friends, they were flirting, sending heart emojis and inside jokes that should have been reserved for me. The crushing weight of betrayal settled into my stomach like a stone, heavy and unyielding. "Sarah, what is this?" My voice trembled as I fought to hold back the tears that threatened to spill over. She shrugged, feigning innocence, but I could see the thrill dancing in her eyes. "I thought you knew. I mean, we were just having a little fun. You wouldn't mind, right?" I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. This was not just a betrayal of trust, it felt like a betrayal of love, of all the dreams I had woven with Mark in my heart. Sarah had crossed a line that I never thought she would dare to. We were supposed to be best friends, sisters, even. How could she do this to me? The air grew thick with tension as I stared into her eyes, searching for any sign of remorse. All I found was a twisted satisfaction, a spark of something dark that I couldn't comprehend. In that moment, the realization hit me like a freight train: Sarah was willing to sacrifice our friendship for a taste of the attention she craved. I was nothing more than collateral damage in her reckless pursuit of validation. Then the doorbell rang, and I felt my stomach churn. My heartbeat thundered in my ears as I exchanged a glance with Sarah. She could see my panic, my heart break, but all she did was grin, a predator eager to watch her prey be devoured. "Go answer it," she urged, pushing me toward the door as though to shove me into the very embodiment of my pain. I opened the door to find Mark standing there, his sun-kissed skin glistening with sweat, his smile radiant and contagious. The moment fell flat as I looked into his eyes, searching for the boy I thought I knew. The boy who would never betray me. But as I replayed Sarah's words in my mind, the fantasy of our moment shattered like glass, cutting deep into my heart. "Hey Joe," he said, oblivious to the chaos that was surging within me. "Ready for some ice cream?" I forced a smile, feeling my heart crack further. "Yeah, sure. Sounds great." But the words felt hollow, empty of the joy they should have contained. My mind raced, and the urge to blurt out the truth warred with the desire to cling to the last vestiges of innocence. "What's wrong?" he asked, tilting his head as he studied my face. The words bubbled up, desperate to escape, but before I could speak, Sarah chimed in, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Nothing. Just girl stuff. You know how it is." Her laughter rang hollow, mocking, as she stepped between us like a shield. I felt my heart sink. In that moment, surrounded by the very people who should have supported me, I was paralyzed by fear of losing both the boy I loved and the friend I had confided in for years. I wanted to scream, to expose the lies that threatened to unravel everything. But the thought of confronting Sarah and ruining my last precious moments with Mark held me captive. So, I played along. I laughed when Sarah teased Mark, cheered when he shared stories of his soccer victories, all the while feeling like I was drowning beneath the surface of a deceitful facade. The betrayal felt like a poison in my veins, seeping through my heart and into every fiber of my being. The tipping point came later that week, when I overheard them whispering in the hallway at school, their laughter bright and carefree. It was a sound that twisted my insides, igniting a fire of rage that I didn't know I possessed. I realized then that I couldn't sit idly by and let them build their happiness on the ashes of our friendship. Betrayal had woken something dark within me, a craving for justice that I could no longer ignore. The innocent dreams I once cherished had transformed into a burning desire for retribution. I would have my revenge. I would reclaim my power, no matter the cost. And that was the moment everything changed. I began to plot, to scheme, not just for my own peace but for the justice that I so desperately craved. The whispers of revenge echoed in my mind, and with each passing day, I became more convinced that I was capable of becoming truly diabolical. So, let me take you on this journey of darkness, a journey where the lines between right and wrong blurred, and where the thirst for revenge became the driving force of my existence. The betrayal may have sparked the fire, but what followed was a tempest that would consume everything in its path. The price of betrayal is steep, and I was more than willing to pay it. As the days turned into weeks, the reality of what Sarah and Mark had done began to sink deeper into my bones, a chilling reminder that trust is fragile and easily shattered. The whispers that once filled my heart with joy turned into haunting echoes of their laughter, following me like a shadow I couldn't shake off. Each time I passed them in the halls, I felt a visceral pain clawing at my insides. It wasn't just betrayal, it was the unbearable weight of being an outsider in a life that once felt so warm and inviting. The corners of my world crumbled. My grades began to slip as my heartache consumed my every thought. I would sit in class, my mind racing with scenarios of vengeance, rather than focusing on the lessons droning on in monotony. My teachers noticed the change. Friends who once reached out were met with silence from me. They didn't understand the turmoil bubbling beneath my surface. But it was during a particularly cruel moment that everything erupted into chaos. I walked into the cafeteria and froze. There they were, sitting at the table where Sarah and I had shared countless lunches, their heads leaning together as if sharing secrets meant only for one another. The sight of them laughing over shared jokes while I sat alone was a dagger to my heart. I could feel the blood rush to my face, humiliation and anger coiling in a tight knot within me. That day, Mark leaned in, his hand brushing against Sarah's arm as they shared a crumpled piece of paper filled with doodles and notes. I could feel my breath hitch in my throat as I watched them. It was an inescapable truth that burned through my heart. I had lost them both. Fueled by rage and despair, I made my way to the bathroom, where I could cry without the world seeing the cracks in my facade. Standing before the mirror, I dug my nails into the porcelain sink, breathing in shaky breaths. As my reflection stared back, I felt a sudden clarity pierce through the fog of pain. I didn't just want revenge, I needed it. That need surged through my veins like wildfire, igniting every dark corner of my mind. I crafted my plans meticulously, allowing my imagination to run wild. I considered exposing their texts, sending screenshots to the entire school. But there was something almost poetic about the way they thrived on their deception. Their laughter was a mask hiding the festering insecurity beneath. I wanted them to suffer, to know what it felt like to be discarded and betrayed. I started with subtlety, planting seeds of doubt among their friends. I casually dropped hints of Sarah's betrayal in conversations, watching as whispers spread like wildfire. "Did you hear about Sarah? I can't believe she would do something like that." Each whisper I sowed brought me a twisted sense of satisfaction, knowing that soon the tables would begin to turn. I wanted their precious bubble of happiness to shatter into a million pieces, each fragment a reminder of what they had done. But the darker my plans grew, the more I lost myself in the process. I stayed up late crafting fake messages and rumors, fueled by a sense of righteousness. I became consumed by this facade of a broken girl planning her revenge. At times, I would hear snippets of conversations about how Sarah had been acting differently, how Mark seemed distracted. Each rumor felt like a victory, a small win that I savored like a fine wine. Then came the day when my actions finally bore fruit. I overheard some classmates discussing Sarah's newfound reputation, a girl who couldn't be trusted, who betrayed her best friend for a boy. Just the thought of it sent a thrill through me. My heart raced with exhilaration. My plan was working, and I was only getting started. But as the days wore on, I began to notice a shift. I felt the darkness I had embraced wrap around me like a suffocating blanket. I was no longer Just a spectator in this game of revenge, I was a player, and the stakes were rising. I became more isolated, losing touch with what little friendship I had left. My laughter was forced, my smile a mask to hide the monster I was becoming. And then came the email from Sarah, a desperate cry for help. The words stung, filled with confusion and pleading, as she reached out to me, trying to mend what had been broken. "Joe, I miss you. I know I messed up. Can we talk?" For a brief moment, I hesitated. The flicker of hope that she could truly understand the pain she had caused washed over me, only to be drowned by the weight of my anger. I felt a twisted sense of triumph in her desperation. She was now the one searching for answers in the wreckage of our friendship. I typed a quick response, a cold dismissal meant to reinforce my resolve, a final nail in the coffin of our camaraderie. "No, Sarah. You made your choice." The darkness within me deepened, and a chilling realization settled in. I was becoming the very thing I despised. I had transformed from the victim into the architect of my own suffering. Each day was filled with the thrill of revenge, but it came at a steep cost. I was losing myself, losing the girl who once dreamed beneath the stars, and not even the promise of revenge could fill the void that betrayal had carved in my heart. And then, that fateful day arrived, the day I had been plotting towards. The school dance was just around the corner. I saw the perfect opportunity to orchestrate my plan, to bring down Sarah and Mark in a public display of humiliation that would leave both reeling. But as I stood in front of the mirror, preparing for my moment of reckoning, I caught a glimpse of myself, of the girl I was before all this fury and heartache consumed me. A fleeting moment of regret washed over me, but it was quickly replaced by the dark thrill of revenge that coursed through my veins. Tonight, I would finally unleash all that I had planned. As the lights flickered and the music pulsed through the gym, I knew that the time for reckoning was at hand. The darkness that once felt like a comforting embrace was now an ominous storm cloud, and I was ready to dance with the devil. Soon, they would know the true meaning of betrayal, and so would everyone else. My heart raced with anticipation, the flames of vengeance licking at my soul, and there was no turning back. Welcome to my world, the world of diabolical. The night of the dance arrived, and with it came a whirlwind of emotions that clashed violently within me. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the hem of my crimson dress, the color of revenge, I thought. The fabric hugged my curves perfectly, and for a moment, I felt beautiful, powerful even. But beneath that facade of confidence lay a tempest of uncertainty and rage, battling for dominance. As I applied the last touches of makeup, my mind wandered to the hours I had spent meticulously planning my revenge. I could visualize every detail, the whispers I had planted, the rumors I had crafted. But nothing compared to the culmination of this evening. Tonight, I would shatter the illusion they had built together. Tonight, I would lay bare their betrayal for all to see. Arriving at the gym, I was struck by the atmosphere, a cacophony of sparkling lights and pulsing music, laughter ringing in the air. I felt like a ghost in this enchanted realm, where joy thrived, but I was consumed by the darkness that clung to me. The sight of Sarah and Mark laughing together, their bodies swaying to the rhythm of the music, sent a wave of bile rising in my throat. I fought the urge to turn away, instead, channeling that sickening feeling into something fiercer. I spotted my friend Mia across the room and made my way over to her, my heart racing. "You ready for tonight?" she asked, her eyes twinkling with excitement. I forced a smile, but it felt like a mask, a flimsy barrier between me and the storm brewing inside. "Absolutely," I replied, my voice steady despite the chaos raging within. As the night wore on, I kept my eyes on Sarah and Mark, waiting for the perfect moment to enact my plan. I could sense the electric charge in the air, a mix of excitement and dread spiraling out of control. I had anticipated this moment for weeks. Every ounce of betrayal I felt morphed into a fire that fueled my determination. Finally, I noticed Sarah stepping away from Mark for a moment, her laughter ringing out like music in the night. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. This was it. It was finally time to take back my power, to reclaim what was rightfully mine. I knew that Sarah had been boasting about her new relationship with Mark to their friends, flaunting their so-called love as if it were a trophy. But little did she know, I had crafted an arrangement that would expose not just her treachery, but also draw attention to the depth of her betrayal. With a flick of my phone, I executed the first phase of my plan. I casually approached a group of our classmates, those who had once been friends with both Sarah and me, and struck up a conversation. I dropped hints of Sarah's lies, sharing what I had uncovered about her and Mark's negligent disregard for my feelings. The whispers spread like wildfire, and within moments, an air of tension hung thick around us. "Did you know Sarah and Mark were texting way before the dance?" I sneered, tilting my head in mock sympathy. "It's almost like she was waiting for me to get out of the way." The truth dripped from my words like poison, each syllable laced with the bitterness I had cultivated. As I watched their eyes widen, the thrill of manipulation surged through me, intoxicating and overwhelming. Just then, I caught a glimpse of Sarah, her expression changing as she picked up on the murmurs swirling around her. Her smile faltered, and I reveled in the sight. Soon, Mark would be caught in the crossfire, and I would finally see them topple from their pedestal of happiness. As the music swelled, I made my way closer to the dance floor, where the energy pulsed through the air like a living entity. I felt a rush of adrenaline as I took a deep breath, knowing that my moment had arrived. I smiled, knowing that the chaos I had orchestrated was about to reach a fever pitch. And then, I saw it, a flash of movement. Sarah and Mark had come together, laughing, their heads bowed closely as they whispered secrets meant only for each other. I could feel the fire in me roaring to life, propelling me forward. With swift determination, I approached them, weaving through the crowd, each step filled with purpose. "Hey, guys!" I called out, my voice slicing through their bubble like a sharp knife. They turned, surprise etched on their faces. "Having fun?" I asked, my tone deceptively light, but I could see the tension in their eyes. "Joanna," Mark said hesitantly, his brow furrowing in confusion. "What's up?" "Oh, I just thought I'd share a little something I've heard," I said, letting the venom seep into my words. "You know, about how Sarah's been telling everyone that she's the better choice. That she's the one you've always wanted. How sweet of her." My voice dripped with faux admiration, the perfect blend of sarcasm and bitterness. Sarah's face blanched, and I felt a rush of exhilaration at the sight of her unraveling. "Joe, what are you talking about?" she stammered, her bravado slipping. Before I could respond, I pulled out my phone, the very weapon I had wielded to craft this moment. "Oh, you know, just the little messages you thought were private between you and Mark. Here's a little snippet for everyone." I raised my voice, projecting it to the surrounding crowd that had begun to gather, eyes wide with curiosity. The collective gasp echoed through the gym as I showed the screen, their shocked expressions feeding my fury. Sarah's face turned a shade of crimson, and Mark looked utterly bewildered, his expression shifting from confusion to a dawning horror. "What? Joanna, you can't do this." He attempted to protest, but my heart thrummed with victory. "Watch me," I retorted, pushing the boundaries further. "You want to know what real betrayal feels like? Look no further than your own perfect little relationship." My words dripped with malice, and for a moment, I felt invincible, like I had finally reclaimed the narrative. As the crowd began to murmur, the weight of my revenge crashed over me like a tidal wave. I could see Sarah's facade crumble as the truth washed over her, her laughter now replaced by stony silence. But in that moment of triumph, amidst the chaos I had unleashed, a flicker of doubt crept in, a momentary hesitation that whispered that perhaps I had gone too far. The darkness that I had embraced, the revenge that felt so sweet, now tasted bitter on my tongue. The realization swept over me like a cold shiver. I had orchestrated my revenge, but at what cost? Would this moment of glory fill the void left by betrayal? Would it truly bring me peace? As I faced Sarah's devastated expression and Mark's bewilderment, I understood that this moment was as much about them as it was about me. And so began the descent into the unknown, a realization that the path of revenge was never straightforward. The taste of victory was bittersweet, and I stood on the precipice of a choice. Would I embrace the darkness within, or would I find a way to reclaim the light I had lost amidst the shadows? Welcome to the turning point of my story, a point where revenge intertwines with regret, and the lines between right and wrong blur beyond recognition. The journey ahead would demand more from me than I had ever anticipated, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of the chaos I had unleashed. The dance floor hummed with anticipation, but it was my heart that raced, caught between the allure of vengeance and the haunting whispers of the girl I used to be. The night was alive with possibility, and as the music pulsed through my very core, I waited to see where this diabolical path would lead me. As the night unfolded, my mind whirred with the intricate details of the revenge I had so carefully crafted. I had spent weeks plotting, not just for the moment I was now in, but for the aftermath that would ripple through our small town. The first phase had gone off without a hitch. The crowd's reaction ignited a fire within me that couldn't be quelled. But I was far from finished. This was merely the opening act of my grand design. My plan had 3 specific phases, each more calculated than the last, designed to ensure that both Sarah and Mark paid dearly for their betrayal. I had already set the stage with the dramatic exposure of their texts, but I hadn't fully unleashed the chaos yet. I knew that mere shock wouldn't suffice. I needed to dismantle their relationship piece by piece. I began to weave a narrative about Sarah and Mark that would solidify their downfall in the eyes of our peers. While the dance continued, I strategically positioned myself among groups of friends, those who loved a good scandal. I leaned in, my voice low and conspiratorial, as I began to seed doubt. Can you believe Sarah pretended to be my friend while dating Mark behind my back? What a hypocrite! Who would want to be friends with someone like that? The shock on their faces fueled my conviction. I made sure to mention how Sarah had often criticized other girls who'd done the same thing, painting her as a fraud. I guess she thinks she's above the rest of us, but look at the reality. It's just pathetic. With each word, I watched as the crowd swelled with interest, eyes darting toward Sarah and Mark, whispers exchanged like currency. I knew that each ripple of doubt would lead to Sarah becoming increasingly isolated. The more I spread the truth behind her lies, the more her trusted friends would pull away. I had a couple of allies in my corner, those who had also felt the sting of Sarah's past judgments. They were more than willing to join my crusade, reinforcing the whispers I had planted. Did you hear that Sarah's been talking trash about us too? I can't believe she had the audacity to treat Joanna like that while pretending to be her best friend, one of my allies would say, encouraging others to reconsider their friendship with a girl who now stood accused of betrayal. By the end of the night, I could see a shift in the crowd. Sarah's laughter became less frequent, replaced by furtive glances and hushed conversations that pointed her way. She felt the heat of scrutiny, and I lay waiting like a spider in her web, fully aware that the next phase of my revenge was just around the corner. While the first 2 phases were focused on public exposure and sowing discord among their friends, the third phase was where I would really sink my claws in. I planned to orchestrate an event that would expose both Sarah and Mark in a way that would shatter their reputation forever. It was bold and risky, but my heart raced with exhilaration at the thought of pulling it off. The annual school talent show was coming up, a perfect opportunity. I decided to use it as the grand stage for my ultimate act of revenge. I had an idea that would turn the spotlight onto them, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. I had a friend who was part of the planning committee, and with a few well-placed subtle hints, I secured a speaking slot for myself. My plan was to utilize my performance to reveal everything to the entire school, live in color. I began drafting a song, an original piece that layered personal anecdotes with biting sarcasm. It would start as a melancholic ballad, drawing the audience into a false sense of security before transitioning into an upbeat, almost mocking tempo that would highlight Sarah's lies and Mark's willingness to betray a friend for a fleeting romantic thrill. I wanted them to hear their betrayal echoed back to them, amplified by the laughter of their peers. As I practiced, I couldn't help but feel a thrill surge through me. The lyrics were sharp, painful, and true. Each time I sang, I envisioned the moment their faces would shift from amusement to horror, as the walls of their carefully constructed world began to crumble around them. "Oh, Sarah," I would sing, "you wore the mask of a friend, but when the lights dimmed, it was me you betrayed in the end." But I didn't stop there. I included snippets of my own pain, painting a vivid picture of how their betrayal had shattered our bond. I wanted the audience to see not just what they had done, but also the emotional toll it had taken on me. I wanted them to understand that betrayal isn't just a fleeting moment, it's a deep wound that lingers long after the act itself. With my plan solidifying, I spent every free moment rehearsing, my body electric with the duality of excitement and dread. I sometimes struggled with the implications of my actions. Was I becoming too consumed? Would my thirst for revenge overshadow the remnants of my former self? But each doubt was drowned out by the intoxicating desire to finally feel powerful again, to reclaim control over my narrative. As the talent show date approached, buzz filled the air. Everyone was talking about the performance I was set to deliver. I could feel the anticipation building, and with it, a sense of urgency. This was about more than revenge, it was about reclaiming my dignity and letting Sarah and Mark feel the weight of their betrayal, live before everyone who had ever loved and respected me. On the night of the talent show, I dressed with meticulous care, slipping into my favorite black dress. It wasn't just an outfit, it was armor. I could hear the chatter of students filling the auditorium, their voices washing over me like a wave. I could only imagine how Sarah felt, knowing her secret was about to be unveiled. The thought ignited a fire in my chest. As I took my place backstage, the adrenaline coursing through my veins felt like electricity. My heart thumped loudly. The anticipation of revenge was both terrifying and exhilarating. I could see Sarah and Mark in the crowd, laughing and whispering, completely unaware of the storm brewing just behind the curtain. As my name was called, the world faded away, leaving only the stage before me. A spotlight illuminated my figure, and I stepped into the blinding light, my heart racing with every step. I searched the crowd, my eyes locking on Sarah's bright smile. In that moment, I felt a cruel sense of satisfaction. It was time for her to face the truth. I took a deep breath, the microphone cool against my palm, and opened my mouth to sing. The first notes flowed like a rush of water, wrapping around the audience and drawing them in. I started with soft, haunting melodies that told a story of hope and friendship, painting a picture of what we used to be. I could feel Sarah's gaze on me, but I didn't waver. Instead, I pressed on, each note becoming sharper, each word carrying the weight of betrayal. As I transitioned into the second verse, my voice shifted, morphing into a biting satire. The laughter came, it echoed through the auditorium, but this time it was directed at Sarah. The lyrics dripped with irony, my heart racing as I watched their expressions twist from amusement to confusion, and finally to shock. The final chorus exploded with energy, the rhythm quickening as I drove home the truth of their betrayal. You thought you'd found the prize, but you played with my heart like a game. Now, here's the truth, the only one to blame. The audience erupted in laughter, and I could see Sarah's face drain of color, Mark's eyes wide with realization. And then, just as I reached the climax, I pulled out my phone and projected the damning evidence onto the large screen behind me. Screenshots of their text filled the room, words echoing the betrayal they had crafted together. Did you really think it wouldn't come to light? That your lies wouldn't be exposed under the bright spotlight? The gasps filled the auditorium like wildfire, and I reveled in the chaos I had unleashed. The laughter turned to murmurs, and the audience erupted into whispers, marveling at the spectacle unfolding before them. I locked eyes with Sarah, her expression morphing from shock to despair, and I felt a rush of satisfaction course through me as the truth hung heavy in the air. I had done it. I had executed my plan flawlessly, and the taste of victory felt bittersweet on my tongue. I wasn't sure if I had accomplished my goal or if I had simply added another layer of pain onto an already broken friendship. But in that moment, standing on the stage with the spotlight on me, I felt, at least for a fleeting second, like I had finally reclaimed my power. As I stepped off the stage, I could hear the whispers begin to swirl, fueled by the revelations I had made. I knew there would be repercussions, but I welcomed them like an old friend. I had freed myself from the weight of betrayal, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next. But as I took a moment to breathe, I felt a flicker of doubt creep back in. Was revenge worth the cost of our friendship? Was victory truly mine if it meant losing a piece of myself in the process? The questions clung to my heart like shadows, and I couldn't shake the feeling that perhaps the true battle was only just beginning. Welcome to the crossroads of my journey, where revenge intertwines with regret, and the path forward remains uncertain. My name is Joanna, and this is just the beginning of my story, a tale that would forever be labeled. As I stepped off the stage, the uproar of the crowd faded into a distant hum, overshadowed by the storm brewing inside me. I had exposed their betrayal, and yet, the moment felt dangerously hollow. The adrenaline surged through my veins, electrifying every nerve, urging me to celebrate. But as I glanced back at Sarah, crumpled and shattered in the spotlight of her own making, an unsettling cloud of doubt loomed over me. The once vibrant laughter around me began to morph into hushed whispers, the energy in the auditorium shifting like the tide. I caught sight of Mia, my friend who had helped me weave this tapestry of revenge, her eyes wide with shock and perhaps a hint of concern. Had I gone too far? The thought sent a shiver down my spine, but the lingering satisfaction of retribution momentarily stifled my guilt. As the crowd began to dissipate, I felt a tugging sensation, a pull toward Sarah, who had now turned her back to the audience, her shoulders shaking with sobs. It was a sight I had craved, and yet, witnessing her anguish felt like a double-edged sword. The bitter taste of revenge began to sour in my mouth as I wrestled with my conflicting emotions. "Joanna." Mark's voice cut through the cacophony as he approached me, his expression a mixture of anger and confusion. What the hell was that? I braced myself, ready to unleash a torrent of words that had been brewing within me ever since I discovered their betrayal. "What did you want me to do, Mark? Sit back and let you both pretend like nothing happened? Like I didn't matter?" He opened his mouth, perhaps to defend himself or to shift blame back to me, but nothing came out. Instead, he just stared at me, eyes wide, lost in disbelief. I could see the wheels turning in his mind, a desperate attempt to reconcile the girl he thought he knew with the hurricane I had become. "Joe, this isn't the way to handle things. You've hurt Sarah, and you've hurt me," he pleaded, the softness of his voice almost breaking my resolve. A surge of anger sparked within me. "You don't get to play the victim here, Mark. You chose to betray me. You and Sarah both did this to me." The room had emptied out around us, leaving only the distant echoes of the crowd behind. My heart raced as I watched Sarah slip away, someone else guiding her through the auditorium, her emotional turmoil palpable even from a distance. I needed this moment. I had worked too hard to let it slip away now. But, as the adrenaline from my performance faded, reality seeped in, thick and suffocating. I was standing in the aftermath of my vengeance, and the consequences weighed heavily on my chest. The cheers from the performance still echoed in my ears, but now they felt like a funeral dirge, a dirge for the friendship I had obliterated. "Joanna, I can't believe you would do this," Mark finally said, his voice heavy with reproach. "You've gone too far. Sarah is hurting, and you need to understand the pain you've caused." "Pain? You think I don't know pain?" I shot back, my voice laced with desperation. "You broke my heart. You both did. You had everything, and you threw it away like it meant nothing." I could see the flicker of regret in Mark's eyes, but the darkness of my revenge loomed larger than any remorse I saw. "Maybe you should think about that before throwing gas on the fire," he said, his voice softening as if he were trying to reach the remnants of the girl I used to be. But I was far from that girl now. I had become a specter of vengeance. Suddenly, the reality of my actions began to wrap around me like a vice. I had become the very monster I sought to destroy, full of anger and rage, driven by the need to make them feel the way I had felt. The joy I expected to feel gradually morphed into something darker, a realization that maybe their betrayal didn't deserve this level of wrath. I turned, searching for Sarah amid the remaining crowd, but she was gone. The weight of my actions crashed over me like a wave, and the adrenaline that had once surged through me was replaced by a deep sense of remorse. In my quest for revenge, I had not only lost her friendship but had become a stranger to myself, a girl blinded by fury, marching toward darkness with no thought of the light. "Joanna," Mark's voice broke through the haze, pulling me back, from the depths of my thoughts. "This isn't who you are. You have to let this go." His words echoed in my mind, reverberating against the walls I had built in my heart. I could feel the cracks forming, the walls crumbling beneath the weight of my actions. In that moment, standing in the remnants of my revenge, I took a deep breath, letting the cold air sear through my lungs. For the first time, I reconsidered the path I had taken. As the realization settled like dust within me, I knew I had a choice to make. Would I continue down this path of darkness, or could I find a way to reclaim the light I once held? The shadows whispered temptingly in my ear, urging me to hold on to my anger, to keep pushing Sarah and Mark away. But at what cost? The auditorium echoed hollowly around me, the remnants of laughter and cheers fading into a silence that felt deafening. I had hurt the people who once meant the world to me, and now I stood amid the wreckage of our friendship. Suddenly, a decision surged through me, a resolve to confront not just Sarah and Mark, but the very essence of my pain. I could feel the tide shifting within me, the remnants of the girl I used to be clawing their way back into my consciousness. I felt the swell of courage rising within me, bolstered by the truth that I was tired of living in the darkness. With one last glance at Mark, I whispered, "I'm sorry." And with that, I took a step forward, determined to face Sarah, to confront the betrayal, and to reclaim my narrative. It was time to break the cycle of hurt and find the strength to heal, not just myself, but the shattered pieces of our friendship. The night was far from over, and the journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but I was ready to step into the light. I would not become a victim of vengeance, I would not let my heart drown in bitterness. As I made my way through the remnants of the dance, a newfound resolve filled my heart. The battle for my soul was just beginning, and I would fight to reclaim not only what I had lost but also the person I had once been. Welcome to the climax of my story, a turning point where the thirst for revenge transformed into a quest for redemption, and the light began to break through the shadows. My name is Joanna, and this is where my journey truly begins. In the days that followed the talent show, the ripples of my actions reverberated through our small town like a tremor beneath the earth's surface. I had set my proverbial bomb off, and the shrapnel of my revenge lay scattered, piercing the hearts of everyone involved, most notably me. The laughter and excitement from the night of the performance faded quickly, leaving behind a heavy silence that echoed in my mind. I became a specter in the hallways at school, my once vibrant presence all but extinguished. Sarah had become a ghost of her former self, and Mark wore the weary look of someone who had just survived a storm. They were both feeling the fallout of my revenge, but so was I. In the first light of dawn the next day, reality hit me like a freight train. I woke up, the adrenaline from the night before dissipating into a thick layer of dread that clung to my skin. My heart felt heavy, weighed down by the burden of what I had done. I had sought vengeance, but what I had truly unleashed was a whirlwind of hurt that left all of us reeling. The whispers that had once been fuel for my fire now felt like daggers slicing through my heart. I was no longer the girl with dreams, I had become the architect of my own pain, and I was haunted by the aftermath of my choices. Friends who once looked at me with admiration now whispered behind my back, some even crossing the hall to avoid me completely. I had become an outcast, and the irony was not lost on me. The very isolation I had intended for Sarah and Mark now wrapped around me like a shroud. In the weeks that followed, I watched as the once inseparable trio of Sarah, Mark, and me crumbled to dust. Their relationship disintegrated under the weight of public scrutiny, but my heart ached at the thought of what I had done. I had turned two people I once loved into pariahs, each suffering under the weight of betrayal while I stood under the heavy burden of regret. I spent countless nights replaying the events, trying to figure out if I could have handled things differently. Thoughts echoed in my mind. Could I have confronted Sarah with honesty instead of vengeance? Should I have sought closure rather than revenge? But the answers felt elusive, trapped beneath the rubble of my choices. And then came the moment that would change everything, a moment I never thought I would face. Sarah reached out to me, a simple text that read, "Can we talk?" My heart raced as I stared at the screen, emotions bubbling to the surface. The girl I had once called my best friend was reaching out, seeking connection amidst the wreckage I had created. I hesitated, fear coursing through me like ice. What would I say to her? Did I even have the right to face her after everything? But deep down, I knew I couldn't run from this. I needed closure, and perhaps she did too. When we met later that week at our favorite cafe, a cozy corner nook that had once been filled with laughter and dreams, the air was thick with unspoken words. I could see the pain etched on Sarah's face, her eyes red-rimmed and weary. "Joe," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "I don't even know how to start this. I miss you. I miss our friendship." The weight of her words hit me like a tidal wave. "I miss us too," I admitted, my voice a quiet whisper. "But I hurt you. I hurt you both." She nodded, tears spilling over as she looked down, her fingers fiddling with the edge of her coffee cup. "You exposed us in a way I never thought I'd have to face. But I deserve it. I betrayed you." We talked for hours, each word piercing the silence that had grown like a chasm between us. We discussed the betrayal, the pain, and the mistakes we had both made. I realized then that revenge had not brought me peace, it had only deepened the scars, both in me and in her. I thought that hurting you would make me feel better, I confessed, guilt clawing at my insides. But it only made things worse. I didn't want to lose you, and in trying to hurt you, I lost myself. The conversation we shared that day was cathartic, a release that allowed us both to breathe again. We acknowledged the betrayal and the hurt, but also the love that had once bound us together. It was a fragile moment, a flicker of hope amidst the darkness I had created. But as much as I wanted to mend things, I knew that rebuilding trust would take time. There was a long road ahead, fraught with memories that would linger like shadows, but the first step had been taken. We began to work on a new foundation, one that acknowledged the mistakes of our past while looking forward to a future that was uncertain but no longer filled with bitterness. In the weeks that followed, I also sought to repair my relationship with Mark. He was angry, and rightfully so, but there was a flicker of understanding in his eyes when I finally approached him. We exchanged words, slowly unraveling the tension that had grown between us. I was wrong to take my pain out on you, I admitted, the weight of my guilt lifting slightly. You didn't deserve what I did. Mark nodded, the tension in his shoulders softening a fraction. I appreciate that, Joe. But it's going to take time for us to get back to anything resembling normal. I accepted that, for I, too, had a long journey ahead. But that journey had to start with honesty, with the courage to confront my emotions rather than mask them with vengeance. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself navigating the complexities of friendship anew, learning how to forgive, not just Sarah and Mark, but myself. Each day was a step toward healing, a gradual reclamation of my identity where bitterness had once taken root. In the quiet moments, I often reflected on the lessons I had learned from this diabolical journey, how the thirst for revenge can lead to a cycle of pain rather than closure. I realized that healing required vulnerability and honesty, and that true strength lies in embracing our imperfections rather than hiding behind walls built on anger. And when I looked in the mirror now, I saw the echoes of the girl I had once been, the girl with dreams and hopes, but also someone who now carried the weight of a painful lesson learned. Rather than allow that lesson to define me, I chose to let it guide me toward growth. In the end, the price of betrayal had been steep, but the journey toward redemption was proving to be worth every scar. I stood at a crossroads, not entirely sure of my destination, but hopeful that the path ahead would lead to something brighter. After all, in a world where shadows loom large, it is the light we choose to walk toward that ultimately defines us. I knew that the scars of betrayal would fade, but the strength I had gained from this journey would remain. So this is me, Joanna, no longer just a girl seeking revenge but a woman learning to forgive, to heal, and to reclaim her own story in the most diabolical of ways. And as I step into the light, I carry with me the hope of a new beginning, a chance to rise from the ashes of betrayal and sculpt a future where love, trust, and resilience reign supreme.